I know something's wrong when someone tells me about a scam, and then my first thought is, nice. Like, are you serious? Exactly. And then I have to catch myself and go, oh, wait, hey, wait a minute. Going it to the manager. She's doing this with the ID. Oh, that's, am I sweating? They pull up your credit, they go, huh? And I go, it's everything in me not to go, what? He realizes, wait a second. I haven't been sentenced yet. And he's like, I got caught like mid-act. It was actually a Buccaneers cheerleader. I mean, when am I going to get a chance to hit a Buccaneers cheerleader?
Buccaneers cheerleader.
You got to. I mean, to me, that's like you get a pass.
I mean, remember, stranger danger.
I feel like that book will lose me a lot of people. People will read that and be like, you've got some issue. Like, it's not, I mean, it is hilarious though, but it's disturbing too. I watched a video of mine the other day and I thought, damn.
You subscribed to your own video. Exactly.
You're good. You should be huge. Yeah, I feel like this should go on its whole. This is not what we're here to talk about. This is not what we're talking about.
Okay, so we're here to talk about the apathy I'm going through right now, right?
Yes.
The disappointment, all that bullshit. So a few things, man. It's like, you know me, I'm the guy who calls out bullshit. Right. I've made a career these days of calling out the bullshit that's going on, both on the bad guy side and with companies and everything. And so recently, it started before that, but it started with Blue Acorn and Wampley. So there's been a few reports that both of these fintech companies help to facilitate.
What is a fintech company?
So not a traditional financial institution, which you are more than familiar with.
Okay.
All right. So this is like PayPal.
Okay.
The people who aren't traditional banks but do banking type business.
Okay. Would also like payday loans and or.
It depends on if they're more online. So you do have some fintech companies that do the payday line type stuff that aren't brick and mortar. Okay. So
it's more internet based.
Right. Okay. So these two companies, specifically these two, there was a report that came out a few months ago talking about how they helped facilitate PPP fraud, the pandemic stuff. All right. The payroll protection program, whatever the hell PPP stood for. A couple of these companies, they processed, 60,000 loans and profited like $2 billion. One of the companies profited $2 billion. The other company profited $1 billion just from processing the loans. And there's just an exorbitant amount of fraud that's connected to every single one of those loans that they process.
So this company could go out and say, hey, your company were they actually soliciting business, or were people going to them and saying, hey, I have a company, I need to borrow PPP money, can you help facilitate that?
So what happens is okay, let's backtrack into stimulus fraud. What happened was as the pandemic begins, we used to teach on Shadow Crew to never act out of desperation. When you act out of desperation, poor choices result. All right, the government did this. They realized the economy was going to go tits up, so they started to implement these stimulus programs. They did unemployment insurance, they did EIDL, they did PPP. Most experienced fraudsters went toward unemployment, all right, because it was instituted with such rapidness that it was very difficult for the more experienced, skilled people out there to set up bank accounts, age them out, get traffic on them, everything else in time to get that $2 million loan that was coming through PPP. But it was still done, all right? What was going on Telegram, on the dark web, on some of the forums, you had the exchange of information. You had people saying, hey, we're doing this type of fraud. The easiest institutions to hit right now are Wampley, Blue Acorn. So it was known within those circles, all right? At the same time, Wampley and Blue Acorn, they're not really good about KYC, know your customer. So they were allowing a lot of bullshit going through without verifying a whole hell of a lot of stuff.
Right.
All right?
Well, plus for them,
they make money.
They're just brokers, right?
That's
kind of
exactly
like they're just trying to get
and it's
the
government's money.
Yeah.
That was really one of the main problems of all of this is you had banks that was processing it. The banks would realize, traditional financial institutions would realize it was fraud and see it, not their money. Why worry about it? So they were allowing this to go through. Two of the biggest offenders, Wampley, Blue Acorn. All right. So report comes out about this, and this is where this whole apathy bullshit starts with me. Report comes out It's issued on LinkedIn. They talk about it across all the fraud good guy fraud channels and everything else. Nobody says anything. All the fraud professionals out there keep their mouths shut. All the financial fintech companies keep their mouths shut. Nobody calls them out. The report comes and goes. All right? Nothing ever said. I'm like, I get pissed off at that. I bitch a little bit about it. 2 weeks ago.
Well, why do you think that is?
I think that it's you're dealing with a bunch of people, whether it be conferences, fraud professionals, or other institutions that were either doing the same bullshit, knew what was going on, profiting by it, blah, 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 across the board. So instead of coming out and saying anything, they keep their mouths shut for fear of losing profit, losing contracts, losing clients, friends, upsetting somebody.
Right.
That's what I think. And I don't think I'm wrong on that.
No, I was just thinking, I got caught by like Washington Mutual multiple times.
Okay.
And I got caught by numerous banks, and they were like, refinance the loan, get us our money back, or hey, pay us our money back, right. and they never called anybody. Like there was never like, even if they threatened to call, it was always like, well, if you don't do this, we'll call the FBI.
Sure.
But in the end, they didn't call the FBI. Because,
now, why do you think that is?
Because they didn't, at the time, even to be honest, even at the time, I thought that they don't want anybody, no matter what, they didn't want anybody, the FBI looking through their files. And at one point, I was actually had a guy with a bank called, it was Pinnacle Bank Corp. It was a small bank in Chicago. It actually went under. But the owner was a guy named Gary Bond. And he actually came down at one point. They caught us with a couple $1 million in fraud. They sold it to Household Bank.
Okay.
And they basically were like, look, just promise me if these loans come back on us, you'll help us get rid of them. And we're like, no problem, because I don't have $2 million to pay you. And he actually came down a few weeks later and met with me and some of my brokers. And during that conversation, he had a couple drinks that night. He took us to dinner. Didn't cut us off. Knows that we gave him $2 million in fraud. Like, he's like, keep them coming, but you got to watch this. So he comes and he says to me, he's like, look, to be honest, he's like, nobody wants the FBI going through their files.
Sure.
He's like, at all. He's like,
sure.
He said, because they're going to come in, you could give them these 2 files, but you don't know where that's going to end. He's like, they may say, well, look, we're subpoenaing all your files. He said, nobody wants to be in that position.
Right.
And he even told me, I really don't care about, we're not so concerned about fraud as long as it goes past the 1-year clawback. Now, at that point, it was 1 year. Now it's like 30 days.
Right.
So he's like, as long as it goes past that 1 year and they can't come back on me,
don't
he said,
give a damn.
I don't care. And it was I just remember I was just like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it.
So and that's my issue, right? Because I'm like this recovering alcoholic.
Right. Okay.
All right. I am. Yeah. I don't say that I'm reformed. I say I'm reforming.
Right.
That the longer I go without committing a crime, the chances I'll continue to go that even further without committing. All right. Yeah. But as that alcoholic, as that now reforming criminal, I'm also this black and white guy.
Yeah.
Just do the right damn thing. I end my show with that bullshit.
Right.
Just do the right damn thing. I can see it from the criminal side. I can understand that bullshit. I don't understand people who actually sign on to a career of doing the right thing and then don't.
Right.
I don't get that. And it's fucking with me, man. I mean, it's fucking with me hard because
it's not hypocrisy.
Not 3 weeks ago, the FTC and Florida, they come out with a complaint against a company called Chargebacks 911. So say you buy something from a merchant someplace, from a store, online, and the store charges you improperly or doesn't deliver the good as advertised. It's broken, what have you.
Right.
Okay. What you do is you contact your credit card issuer or your bank and you say, hey, I want to do a chargeback. I want my money back. It wasn't as described. The bank then notifies the merchant, hey, we're going to get that money back from you.
Right.
Now,
they give them an opportunity.
Right. That's what's called a chargeback. Now, that dispute sometimes is handled by the merchant. A lot of the times it's handed over to a third-party company like Chargebacks 911, who fights that dispute for you. They'll send in the documents, everything else to the issuing bank and say, hey, we're disputing this. We don't agree with this, and they'll fight it tooth and nail. Chargebacks does that, all right? So the complaint against Chargebacks 911 is they were using deceptive and illegal practices to fight those chargebacks, thereby defrauding legitimate consumers.
Right.
All right, and the way they were doing that is when you would go on to sign on for like a free trial of something, The consumer would see one screen. However, there was another screen that only the bank would see. All right. So what was happening is chargeback 911, they wouldn't show the consumer screen that didn't have any of that bullshit at all. They would instead take a snapshot of the bank screen, say the consumer saw this screen, send it to the credit card issuer, and win the chargeback. So they were using these deceptive practices to do this kind of shit. Illegal as fuck. All right. Not only that, but chargebacks 911. See, what happens is when you're one of these fucked up merchants that's committing this type of fraud, say new free trial fraud or what have you, you get a lot of chargebacks. Once that chargeback percent hits a certain amount, it not only raises your credit card fees, but Visa and MasterCard, they'll boot your ass out where you can't take their credit cards anymore. So what Chargebacks 911 was doing, according to FTC, what they were doing is they offered what was called a value-added program. We've got this set of prepaid debit cards, and we'll allow you to run fake transactions through these cards to boost up your overall transaction amount, lower the chargeback ratio.
Right. Okay.
Again, illegal as fuck.
Yeah. They're manipulating the system so that you stay below that 2% or 0.002% chargeback rate.
So here I am, comes out clear as day. All right. Now there's tons of merchants, tons of what they call fraud fighters out there, everything else. I start bitching about it. Who doesn't talk about it? None of the merchants, none of the fraud professionals out there, none of the conferences that Chargebacks 911 is sponsoring.
Right. Well,
now, why is that?
Yeah.
Well, it's because of fear of losing profit, fear of being fingered. Maybe you were a client of theirs. Maybe you knew what was going on, everything else. And that's this issue that I've got, man, is, again, I can understand this shit from a criminal view. I get the guys out there that are stealing money. I understand that.
Right.
I don't understand these son of a bitches that sign on for a job to do the right thing and then don't.
Right.
So that's what I'm struggling with. And I've been raising mortal hell about that.
I was gonna say I was gonna say one I was gonna say that it's funny because it's when people are like, what do they always say? Like I'll say, my name is Matt Cox and I'm a con man. They'll go, well, you want to say like reformed con, or do you want to say that you want to say? And I'm always like, I mean, not really, because you know what I'm saying, because the truth is I know something's wrong when someone tells me about a scam, and then my first thought is, nice. Like, are you serious? Exactly. And then I have to catch myself and go, oh, wait, hey, whoa, wait a minute. Listen, you need to think about this.
You hear about the crime, you start chuckling like, yeah,
that's good. Listen, what I used to do. And it's like, I want to listen to this. And then I think, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Like, bro, you're this close to going back to prison. Like, what are you doing?
Before.
Yeah.
And then you do this. And did you do this as well?
Yeah. What did they say at the bank? So, how'd you catch the cat? But it just reminds me when it's like these guys, like the credit cards, right? Like for 2 decades, they were saying, put the chips in the card, right. First of all, to stop fraud, which was funny because when they were doing that, I was actually writing Bosiak's book. And I was in prison with John Bosiak writing his book, and I said, but now all that's shut down because of the chips, right? And he just started laughing. He said, are you fucking serious? He goes, man, the fake chips were on the market before the people were getting the real ones in the mail.
Right.
He said, that's not going to stop anything. Plus, he said, it doesn't matter anyway. You can try it twice, and if the chip doesn't go through, it says, swipe the card.
That's exactly right.
And I was like, well, I don't understand. I said, well, why the banks fought it, or the banks weren't even interested in implementing it, because the banks had already calculated in the fraud, and we've got a calculation of fraud built in. So it cost us more to try and stop the fraud. Right. And the fraud, we then pass those fees and those charges on to the customer. So the only person that's being hurt from fraud is the customers, which we really don't care about.
That's exactly right.
Why would we go out of our way to take our own money and update all these systems that's going to cost us money that in the end we can really just pass on to the customer?
So see, and that's it. You're getting it now, right? So you're looking at going out and doing speaking gigs, all right? I've been doing this for a few years now, all right? So and again, it's started to fuck with me a little bit, because when I'm talking these days, what I'm talking about is, hey, you know what's causing the problem? What's causing the problem is that there's so much shit out there that you guys have been told to do, and you're not. That's what causes this entire threat landscape that's out there. It's not cyber criminals who are really sophisticated that are doing zero-day attacks, all this other bullshit. It's 90% of all the attacks are known exploits, the shit you guys have been told to do that you're not. Why aren't you doing it? Profit. Profit. You don't want to cause any friction. You don't want to scare a consumer away. You want to pocket all that money, walk away with it, and you want the consumer to eat it. And you're just going to pass those costs right on to them. That's exactly the problem. And it's like, you know, I've been saying recently that my out date from cybersecurity, I'm 53, my out date is January of when I turn 60. That's it. I quit in a little under 7 years now. And I don't know what the hell I'll do, but it won't be bitching about this stuff anymore, because it's like, come on, guys, it's beating your head up against a wall every single day. You've got a select few people that call out bullshit. But most everyone else, they're scared of losing their little piece of the pie.
Right.
And that's it. So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You know?
I was going to say, like I mentioned that I'll, you know, talk in front of law enforcement. I was talking in front of the financial crimes guys.
Sure.
And first of all, one of the things that shocked me, and I know you talk in front of these guys too, is that some of the things I was saying when I was just explaining how I got like the DMVs of different states to issue the driver's licenses. Sure. And just as I'm kind of going through it, they're like they
have no idea.
I thought, like, I'm stopping, and then somebody, and then I keep going, and when I mentioned that I got the U.S. State Department to issue passports, they're literally, a woman said, well, how did you do that? And I thought, and I sat there and I thought, like, you've been doing this 15 years. How do you know that, like, how do you not know it's this easy? How do you not know the process? And so as we're talking, so I'm sitting there going on and on, but they were like, you know, well, when you were making the synthetic identities, like, well, I don't understand. I thought like, well, how could you stop something like that? Like, what they said, what kind of procedures could be put in place that could stop someone from or the bank from going forward with the loan? And I went, well, the procedures are already in place. They just don't follow them.
That's exactly right.
And they go, like what? I said, well, almost, not every time, but a good majority of the time when I would actually go, because a lot of times I'd go into the bank. The reason I'd go in the bank and show my face is because if I call on the phone, you're already thinking I don't know this person. But if I walk in, I give you my ID, and I'm standing in front of you, already don't think fraud.
You're done at that point.
At that point, they're like, this guy's good. He came in the bank. He's sitting here. So they would pull my credit right then. I apply right then. They pull my credit. I've got the W-2s. I got my pay stubs. I got everything I want. Oh, you bank statements? Yeah, I got my bank statements. Yeah, are these enough? Yeah, I got those. And so they pull my credit, and they would go, and this is something you don't want to hear when you're sitting in front of somebody, is where they pull up, they're sitting, they pull up the thing, right? You hear that? And then they go, huh. Like, huh. Is not what you want to hear sitting in the bank. My first thought is, how close did I park?
Exactly. Like, they're typing, they stop, and it's like, huh.
Yeah. Or even worse, when they grab your eye. I've had them take the ID and go, hold on a second, and stand up. It's like, oh my God.
You have to get that ID back. I'll need that back.
He just walked away with my fake ID. Oh, he's showing it to the manager. She's doing this with the ID. Oh, that's am I sweating? So, and then, they would sit down and they'd go, huh. Sometimes they pull up your credit, but they go, huh. And I go, it's everything in me not to go, what? And I go, what's up? And they'd say, well, it says your Social Security number was issued within the last year. And I go, huh. Really? Yeah. Then I'm going, huh? Can I get my ID? No. And I go, really? And they go, yeah. They go, and your credit cards are only they're all about a year old. And I go, right. And then I go, what does it say my date of birth is? Like, and knowing that it's going to say the right thing because I'm the one that inputted it. When I applied for these credit cards, it populated it. It automatically created a credit profile. Right. So they would go, yeah, it says you were born in 1970. I'm born in 69, but I always use like July 7th, 1970. So all I have to remember is 7.
That's it. 7's across the board.
So they go, yeah, it says 1970. And I'd go, huh. And they go, this is your social security card your number. And I go, yeah. They go, have you always used this? And I would go, yeah, it's on my W-2s. And they would say, then they already have two. So they look and they go, yeah. And then I go, yeah, you know what? I said, hold on a second. I always have one that was like 5 or 6 years old. Pull it out and I'd go, here, same thing.
See, same thing.
And sometimes I'd even have 1040s, like the actual tax return. I got my tax return from like 10 years ago. Pull that out and they'd go, yeah.
All right.
And they'd go, huh, okay.
And let's be honest, that's because if you'd have tried that bullshit over the phone, no.
No, they probably would have said, let me get back with you. Right. Let me check this. But one, I'm in person. But two, they're also thinking, I want this to go through because I make a fee. Like it definitely works on brokers, mortgage brokers. I want it to go through. He's given me a reasonable explanation. It's an issue. I have this stuff. Maybe somebody else will catch it. Well, it just got through. You were the first line of defense. It just got through you. The next guy, you're giving him a package of all the stuff. The likelihood that he's even going to recognize that it said fraud in this one part is very unlikely, especially when you just gave him a full package, right. W-2s, pay stubs. You gave him, I put money down. There's bank statements. There's an appraisal order. Like everybody thinks I'm legit. You've got a driver's license. Like all he had to do was call Social Security, or go on. It's a U.S. citizen like .gov, I think, or
right.
Take the name and the number and the date of birth and put it in. It would have said. It doesn't match. Like there's all these little things you could have done, but you saw a fee. I gave you a semi-reasonable explanation. If you had any training at all, you would have known synthetic identity. Like you would have known, no, let me check. It's worth a call.
But they didn't care.
They didn't care. He's going to make $2,500 or $3,500 for a broker fee. Maybe he gets 60% of that. He works at a bank. Maybe he gets less than that. What does it matter? He still has a close so many loans. If it's a broker, he's getting 50-60% of a $3,000-$4,000 fee. He wants this to go through.
Sure.
So like there's all these systems that are in place. They just don't. They don't follow them. They don't.
So here's
He once conned Bank of America out of $250,000 using nothing but a fake ID and his charm. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't typically commit crime, but when I do, it's bank fraud. Stay greedy, my friends.
Support the channel. Join Matthew Cox's Patreon.
And so what year was this you were doing this?
I mean, this was 2000 and up to 2000, late 2006.
Okay.
But I mean, that same system.
Same system.
Exactly.
It got easier after 2011.
Yeah, I think
CBN fraud that was going on. Got easier at that point.
I was going to say, listen, now you can go online and just, like, I used to have to make my W-2s and pays. I used to have to know some math.
Right.
Now you don't have to know anything. It's like, how much do you make an hour? I don't know. Was $30? How much does that come to? Oh, 40 hours a week. It'll populate everything for you.
So, and I want to talk about, I want to move over into the how criminals actually act in a little bit. But what I wanted to ask you about is, how do you fix that problem where you've got these assholes that care more about putting money in pocket than they do about stopping the problems that are, in your case, literally right in front of them?
I would think some kind of a benefit to them. Like if you were going to make money on reporting that fraud, and if it was prosecuted or even catching it,
right?
Maybe they would. But there's no benefit for him to catch that fraud, that broker to catch that fraud, or even let's say the employees that knew what was going on in those companies that clearly see it, that they know what's going on.
Right.
For them to say something isn't beneficial to them. They lose their license or they lose their job, most likely. There's an investigation. It costs them tons of money to go meet with the FBI. They lose days at work. They lose all these things. They get labeled as a snitch or the person that brought this company down. Sure. The whistleblower laws are bullshit. Like they don't, almost nobody's
every
getting
whistleblower is always screwed over.
Yeah, they're always screwed over. So if you actually utilize the whistleblower laws that are already on the books and gave people 10% and gave them this much money and gave them an incentive to turn to actually follow the laws that are already there, then I would think that people would start. Then I'd be looking for fraud.
Well, sure. Sure.
I want to find some fraud. It's quick. I get a check quicker for returning the fraud than I do if this loan. Probably the loan might not even go through, but I know that's fraud.
But then you would have all this false reporting of fraud.
Would it be false? I don't know. Yeah. Well, in that case, I don't know what that other than that could be. There's some stuff that I think it's just education. There's just no education. Some of these people just don't know.
Oh, they don't. But it's like you said, the tools.
Right.
It didn't matter whether you were back then doing synthetic like that, if you're current day doing CPN fraud or what have you. The tools to stop bank fraud have been in place.
Yeah.
They're there. It's just nobody's implementing the tools. So
Right.
it's easy enough to walk into a bank and set up this stuff.
Yeah.
Hell, I did that with new account fraud all the time. You'd say, why do it on the phone? Go in with the ID, hand it to them. Yeah, I'm nervous as hell the first few times, but after you do it a few times, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
we're good to go.
What's even worse is when a little thing goes wrong here, little tiny things, and you get past them. Then I got to the point where I would walk in the bank. I'm ready to argue. Like they're like, well, we're going to call the manager. Call them.
Right.
You've got $80,000 of my money in this bank.
Raise a scene.
And they're like, damn. Like, yeah, I'd be pretty upset about that too. And you're saying this, and you're like, I don't know who you need to call. And they're like, oh wow, Jesus, just cut this guy a check. Yeah, let's waive that policy. It's like
he's all right. Just get him out of here.
Yeah, because I'm also thinking to myself, like, in my case, like if the cops show up. Like I was so confident about it. Like I have a real ID.
Right.
I have a real, the cop's not going to show up and say, we're going to run your ID. Run it.
Yeah.
The DMV 5 miles away issued it. That's my pictures coming up. So if that's the case, but some of these guys are using fake IDs
Right.
and fake this and fake that. But if they still were to walk in, that you get so good at knowing what their bank's procedures are. You know them better
Right.
than. Like I would know if I walked in and said, hey, if I asked for over $3,500, then on a new account that had been issued within the last 6 months, I knew they had to call another branch to talk to somebody to get clearance, even though I had $200,000 in the bank. And I would go in and I'd say, so I knew I either walk in and I ask for, $3,100 or I might as well ask for $9,800.
One of the,
You know what
right.
I'm saying? Like
Go big or just
exactly.
Go
So it's
right.
like, yeah, 3,100. Why? Because I got 6 more banks to do today. Or I'd say I got 3 banks to do today. 9,500. I'll wait the 10, 15
I'll
minutes.
wait.
Yeah. Oh, you're
gonna make your call.
Yeah. You're gonna want my ID. You're gonna want my credit card. Here's my social security number. Also, you're gonna want to know my home address. It's such and such. Like I knew what the questions were coming before they knew.
All right. So I don't know who's interviewing who here, man, but okay, so here's one of the things that I've noticed too. All right, so you and I, really good social engineers. We
Yes.
know what the hell we're doing.
Yeah.
But the reason we know what we're doing is we're motivated for a completely different reason.
Right.
All right. The reason I mentioned that is there's a whole shitload of gray hat or white hat social engineers out there.
Okay.
That I don't really think they're worth much of anything, to be honest with you, because
Right.
they're motivated for a completely different reason. If the shit that we're doing doesn't work, at the worst case scenario, we don't eat that night. I mean,
Right.
at the best case scenario, we don't eat that night. Worst case, we
You
go to jail.
Yeah. You're
All right.
You're calling somebody on the phone.
Exactly. So,
Put some money on my books.
so the thing is that when you're looking at security services, at these people who are giving the training, all right, and this is where you and I come in as being valuable to financial institutions, to merchants, to across all these different verticals in there. You take a security guy that comes in that's never done anything like that, who's trying to teach social engineering, as a job,
Right.
versus the guy who is a social engineer because he has to be, and he has to be effective at it, or he doesn't eat, or he goes to jail at the end of the
Right.
day. There's a difference in the way that you approach that and the way that you train that.
Yeah, the bar is at definitely at
Right.
a different level.
So
yeah.
and that's one of the things that one of the things I've been bitching about. I bitch a lot on LinkedIn these days. You may have noticed that.
I a little bit.
But it's you did a show on Frank Abagnale,
Yeah.
the fake criminal guy.
Yeah.
All right. We've got a lot of that bullshit that goes on.
Yeah.
You know your shit.
Right.
I know my shit.
Yeah.
Boziak knows his shit.
I was gonna say, and if I don't know it, I'm more than happy to say I never did that. I don't know. Because I have people ask me, hey, will you talk about stock fraud? Will you talk about pump and dumps? Will you talk about
Don't know a damn thing.
I don't know anything about it.
I can Google it.
Yeah, like I mean, I watched Wolf of Wall Street. I understand the basic concept. I was in jail with some guys.
Maybe we'll get Jordan if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, but I couldn't. It's so funny too because you can always tell the guys that know it because suddenly they're talking about, the first thing you got to do is you got to file for a such and such and this and that. You got to fill this out. You got to fill that. You got to go to the
They just start rattling that shit off.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, I have no clue what's happening, so I don't talk about it because the thing is, a fisherman knows a fisherman. So if somebody's, it's like with the cops. For a cop to go undercover, people think, oh, well, they go undercover. Listen, that's difficult. It's dangerous. Criminals talk in a certain way, and drug addicts and drug dealers will know they have a certain, and they will know very quickly, like, oh man, you don't know what you're talking about.
No, you don't have a clue, dude.
Right.
So I remember when I started working, when Secret Service brought me in, I'd been there maybe 3-4 days, all right? And they were like, we don't want you to start reaching out. We need credit card numbers. I'm like, okay, dude. So here I am. I'm on my little laptop looking for credit card numbers. I'm talking to a seller. And I'm like, look, man, it's going to take some time to talk to this guy. No, get the card numbers. Get the card numbers. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. So I sent him a message. It's like, do you have any card numbers? He's like, yeah, man. I was like, I'll take anything you got. And he wouldn't sell them to me.
No.
I was like, and they're like, agents are like, what the fuck's going on?
It's suspicious.
Well, a week later, the guy's telling me, he's like, you didn't ask a goddamn thing about the names attached to them, the genders, nothing else like that. How are you going to use them?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's because I got 2 fucking agents behind me screaming in my ear, get them, get them, get them. And that's one of the things that you see on all these forums is you see some security guy coming in, you see some law enforcement guy coming in, and they'll start using this terminology that nobody in the fucking world uses. They'll use synthetic fraud. Well, nobody calls it synthetic fraud. They call it CPNs.
Right.
CPNs is what they call it. They talk about things in different ways. And all of a sudden you got the other guy that comes in that's asked these pointed questions that nobody ever asked before.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, we know who you are.
Yeah.
And go from there.
Yeah. It's so funny too. I was gonna say I know multiple guys that literally like they would come in, you'd have a drug dealer or something introduce another guy, and they'd start talking for 5 minutes, and the guy would say, yeah, he's a cop, and they just walk away, like they're walking away, like, how did he know? He's like, I don't know what I said, I don't know this, I don't know that.
He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah, well, yeah. Or even if you said the right things, you didn't say it correctly.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You're saying I need social security numbers. It's like, okay, well, nobody's going to say social security numbers because you have to say it over and over. They're going to abbreviate. And what are the abbreviations for all of these different things? Just like if I talk to somebody in the business, or as a mortgage broker, somebody, because nobody in the mortgage industry says a mortgage loan application. They call them 1003s because that's the form.
Right.
Hey, do you have a 1008? Do you have a 1003? Do you have They know the forms, and it's easier to say. And you're in the industry, and you see it all the time, and you hear it all the time. So, yeah. So you can. So
you've got the commonality of the language, and use that.
Right, and that I think that's something
so much that you've got that. It's no longer that formality of things because you're communicating on the same level as everyone else. So.
Right. So for you to go on and do that, because I've talked to guys before, because I wrote a story recently and I talked to an ATF agent who went undercover for a long time,
right,
multiple times, and he had explained he goes, you have to really be that person. Like he's like I literally would let my my beard grow. I wouldn't shave. I wouldn't shower for a day or two. I'm wearing the same clothes over and over again. He's like, because he said you have a certain look that these guys in the gun community have, and he said he's like, and they say certain things, and he said, so I had to hang out with these guys to get that down. He said, and even then, he said, it takes a while before you're comfortable enough. Because he's dealing in guns, like it could go bad.
Yeah.
But also we were talking about how a lot of times they have to introduce you slowly, and then they have to get rid of the main guy and then kind of hand you off for your credibility. Your credibility. So, but it's the same thing on Bozak it's the same thing when he was buying plastic, and he was. He has all these things, how he had to buy this, how he had to do this, how he had to repackage this, how he had to put, because they would, he'd bubble wrap this and he'd vacuum seal this and he'd stick in an invoice. He's like, you learn this stuff after getting caught so many times.
I mean, that's So okay, so you were caught too.
Yeah.
Several times, and you keep getting away. It's the same thing with me, man. I mean, he's absolutely right. You get caught. This is how I got caught, so I'll fix that bullshit for the next time. And it's a learning process over and over.
And you know how you got to that point.
Oh yeah.
Like I know. How do I know? Well, because one time this happened. But if it's an undercover and they say, "How'd you figure that out?" He better have a story.
Quickly.
You know, well, the CI told me this is how it has to be done.
Exactly. My guy told me.
Yeah.
He didn't walk me through everything, but he told me.
Oh man, what was the guy? The dark. What'd you call him? The kingpin. Dark web kingpin.
Who was this?
This guy. Listen to this. Actually, if I had a couple of these guys,
Real guy or not?
No, real guys.
Okay.
Real guys. Listen, I'm going to mention the ATM guy.
Yeah. Okay.
So listen, I have an ATM guy that contacted me. So he had from a Bitcoin machine. I didn't even know they had Bitcoin. Bitcoin cash machines, right? Like he had to explain it to him. I was like, are you
then
serious?
you got idiots that try to steal the damn Bitcoin ATMs. Yeah.
No, he didn't do that.
Right.
What he was the he worked for Loomis. He worked for Loomis.
Okay.
So he's going and checking the ATMs. He checks the ATMs. He said, well, there was a problem with the Bitcoin machines. He said they never knew. Like the other machines, they would say, look, you have to go refill the machine with, it's 300,000 or 200,000, and you put the package in. He said, then you pull whatever the deposits were. He said, but they know it's out of money.
Sure.
They know how much. He's like, the Bitcoin wasn't like that. The Bitcoins, because they're like privately owned, he said they go in and they're like, hey, check that machine, see if there's anything in it. He's like, what do you mean, see if there's anything in it? He's like, you'd go and I'd come back and I'd be like, yeah, there was nothing in it. Or I'd go and I'd say, yeah, there was like $20,000,
Right.
And he said, so at one point I realized the company knows, but my company, Loomis, doesn't know. So one day I went and I swung by to check it, and he said, I took 10 grand. Yeah, stuck in my pocket. He's like, he said, there's a camera, it's over there. He said, but it can't see. I just looked in the machine, I stiff in my pocket, I close it, and I leave. He's like a week later, they call him in the office. Can you come in here? And he's like, yeah, what's up? They're like, so we don't really, we feel like something happened. There's an issue. There's some money.
We feel there's a problem.
I think he said he didn't even really know how much money was. They never really said how much money was even missing. He's like, I don't even know that they knew how much money was missing. But anyway, they basically said, look, you can keep showing up, you can keep coming to work, but eventually we're going to figure out something.
Sure.
Or you can just and he said, basically, I felt like they were saying they're going to figure out a way to fire me.
Right.
He said, or you can just leave. And he said, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to leave. So he left.
So for 10 grand, he just left.
For 10 grand, right, which is nothing. But he never got caught. He sends me an email, says, hey, you want to hear this story? He tells me basically the story, and I was like, sure. So I talked to him on the phone. I go, okay. And he goes, and I said, okay. I said, so what do you want to do? And he said, well, what do you think? It's a good story? I said, yeah, I think it's an interesting story. Do you want to come on the podcast and tell it? He goes, yeah. I said, all right. Nice. And
he came on the podcast and
yeah,
ratted himself out.
And I told him, even before that, I said, let me explain something. I said, I have a lot of guys. This is what happens. They'll come on the podcast, and I said, look, I'm gonna tell you right now. I said, if it's a Zoom interview, I said you're looking at getting between 5,000 and 10,000 views. If it's an exceptional interview, maybe 15 or 20.
Right.
If it's in person, I get about 40% more views. That's and that's just my, calculation.
Sure.
Based on really very little. But I feel like I'm probably right? About 30-40% more if someone's in person. Generally.
Based on very little.
Yeah. Periodically, you get somebody that they're here and just nobody's interested. That's fine.
Right.
But for the most part, I think it's about 30-40% more. So I explained it to him, and I said, so here's the problem. I said, I've had guys come on. We do the podcast. They say some things that they weren't thinking at the time. Like they forget the cameras are there. I said, they end up, the podcast comes out. They then tell all their friends about the podcast. And then 2 days later, they call me up or they start texting me saying, hey, listen, I should have never said this about Jimmy.
Yeah,
He's
too late.
furious. Exactly. Or, hey, listen, that's going to cause me problems at my work.
Yeah.
My boss said this. And I had one guy that went so far, and I came back and I was like, yeah, listen, bro. I said, like I spent money to have, a guy come here and do this. And so, come, and I was like, that's a couple $100.
Right.
I have, I have an agreement with someone. Like, I can't be putting stuff up and taking it down. We had the conversation.
Right.
And the only reason any of these people know about your, like, it didn't come up on their feed. You called these people because you're nobody. Like, your name's John.
Because you're nobody.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean.
To what?
You did. And then you're upset because you're like, Jimmy calls up and says, hey, you fucking used my name. You said that fucked up shit that we did and nobody knows about it. So Jimmy's in trouble with his wife and so. Now I might lose my job. And then, so this one guy literally got worse and worse and worse, right? Like within a week, he's calling me up saying, he's talking about his kids are getting picked on. He's going to lose his job. They pulled him aside. And
you didn't think of any of that.
Yeah. And I sat there and I was like, and I knew it was all bullshit.
Right.
Like I'm like, okay. Right. Okay. All right. Yeah. I said, look, let me talk to Colby. Let me see if I get it taken down. I called Colby. I said, yeah, this is what the guy's saying. Colby's like, look, yeah, we'll take it down. We'll take it down. So I call him back and I say, yeah, Colby said no. No, he's a dick.
Oh shit,
he's a dick. I blame everything on Colby. I'm a nice person. I want to help.
He said no.
I want to help you. He's unreasonable. I don't know what this problem is. He doesn't care about you like I do.
He says the show's going viral. Everyone likes it.
He said you're a criminal. He said this could be $500. This could be $500, $600. Like, I mean, how much money do you have? No. He's shaking. I know. That's what I said. I said, Colby, we can't shake him down. So, yeah.
So what happened with the Bitcoin guy?
So the Bitcoin guy.
Yeah.
I tell him this whole thing. I tell him, like, look, don't call me up later because of anything that you've said. He's like, that's fine. They chose not to prosecute me. They're not going to prosecute me.
Yeah, they're not.
They've already this. He said, plus, it's a small town. I said, look, keep in mind, don't be calling all your buddies telling them.
Fucking idiot.
I said, no. So I told him, don't do that. I said, and he said, well, do you think I'll get charged? I said, no, I don't think you'll get charged.
I think you might.
No, I still don't think he's going to. But he did get upset.
I would
he posted it because these fucking people in the comment section, my guys are like, what the one guy, what's the top comment?
Keep me posted on what he pleads to.
Yeah, keep me posted on what he pleads to is the top comment. But I mean, guys are coming back going like, bro.
So here he is. He's got the hard on, wanting to read the comments, all the feedback of the first one. Let me know what he pleads to.
Yeah. Oh, listen, it gets worse. It keep like, and there's tons of people going, and then of course they're calling him names and stuff, and so and they're calling him names, and look, these are not professional speakers. That you're talking to. So people are mean, like really mean. Like they start like, could this guy say one more fucking time, or this guy fucking, I can't hear him, or he this. Oh, I like nobody's gonna recognize him because what? He's got his fucking sunglasses on. What's this fucking guy's problem? And like they're going on and on.
Was he wearing sunglasses?
He was wearing sunglasses.
Of course he was.
And it was dark. But so he goes on and on and I come back. First he says, look, bro, can you do me a favor? Oh, this was the worst. Somebody used like a spoof app.
Oh, God.
Someone tracked down his phone number and spoofed him saying they were from Loomis's home office and texted him. And he's like, yeah, they texted me. I said, listen, Loomis is not going to text you. He's like, well, it says it's from Loomis. It says Loomis, whatever, home office. And I said, bro, call him back. Call him back. Tell him to email you. I said, I guarantee you he's not going to have a Loomis email. And he goes, okay. So he calls back and he goes, oh, it's like a Google number. It's like a Google, I was like, okay, bro. He's like, yeah, I knew it was bullshit. I said, yeah.
You did. Mm-hmm.
So then it goes on. Then he comes back and he said, can you please blur my face on the thumbnail? No problem. I blur it. Colby, will you? Colby,
so you
yeah.
That.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then another week goes by.
See, you're much more charitable than I would be.
Oh, no. Typically, I would be like if he started saying, you got to take it down, I'd be like, no, I'm not taking it down. Like
you agreed to come on.
Right. Like you knew this. We had a conversation. I didn't lie to you. We had a conversation. Anyway, so Colby
told you how this would go.
Yes. And so so anyway, then he comes back and he asks, can you blur my whole face out through the whole video?
Oh, wow.
You can do that. Colby did it. Was it hard or was it a
It
pain?
takes like 10 minutes.
So you went that extra step of
Yeah,
just
he
blurring him out there?
blurred his face out. But then again, he did like put his name on the thing. You can't do both. You can't blur, can you?
You can't blur and then cut. You can't like cut out certain segments.
Right.
And blur. So
And
it's one-
people don't understand. Like you could if he took the video down, but he's not going to take the video down. Like because once it's posted, if you take it down, you're reposting the video.
Right.
It starts all over, and then I have to listen to 1,000 people scream, "This
Where's
was
my
on
comments?"
last week, motherfucker. Where's my comments? What the?" So I told, and he's okay with it. He's like, "Look, I'm okay with it. You blurred me out. You did this. You did that. I'm fine. I'm good with it. I appreciate it. I'm not trying to tell you how to run your channel. That's fine. Fine." Well, so that's one guy that calls me. Second guy that calls me put a little more forethought into it. And this was this guy's name was Colby too. This Colby tells. Look, some guys in there are in the comment section are like, like he can't tell a story. The truth is, he told a fucking phenomenal story. You would love it. He's selling stuff on the dark web, right? Okay. He used Torah, whatever. He goes on a forum. He becomes a vendor. He's selling drugs on counterfeit
Right.
drugs. So he's and the thing is now people are bashing him because it was I don't want to say it was can I say it, the active ingredient.
Fentanyl?
Yeah,
Or what?
right.
Okay.
Well, see, I'm worried of the YouTube. Trust me, we're constantly battling YouTube. We say stuff. So I told him, don't say it. Oh, I said, like, you want to say it once or twice, that's fine. But then stop saying it. Just say, and he goes, no, I'll just say the active ingredient. And I said, okay. So he did say it like once or twice and then said the active ingredient. Then everybody's hammering him like, oh, this guy, he knows what he's selling, poison. He doesn't want. It's like, I asked him, but my comment section, it's a sewer. They're horrible. They are vicious to people. They hate them.
So were they mad that he was selling drugs or just fake drugs?
I don't think they were just fake drugs. If you're selling anything with that product in it, people,
that's a problem.
Right.
That is a problem.
Well, people feel like you're selling, like you're trying to kill people. Like
right.
to him is like one guy's like he's killing people. Listen, this is U.S. government. If they could pin a murder on him, or even they would.
That.
Like there's no and listen, he sent me his PSR. Like I read his PSR. Like the government never says anything about there being any deaths related to in any way.
And if you're absolutely right, if they could have, they absolutely would.
Right.
Have. Absolutely.
So we have this long conversation. He and I have this conversation. One about prison. Afterwards, we talked about prison and what to do, what not to do. I thought he does laugh a lot. Like he's a very jovial guy, right? Which is great.
Right.
I'd rather talk to that guy. Like people make fun of that, oh, if he's always laughing and joking about what he did, like, come on, he's just a fucking happy person.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like I laugh all the goddamn time.
Right.
But the thing is that
people get angry,
or cry. They get angry about that. But that's almost a defense mechanism. It allows you to talk about stuff that you would never really be able to talk about unless you're sitting there joking about it at the same time.
Right.
I'm not happy that I ripped off a shitload of people.
Right.
I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy that I was a liar and a piece of shit for years.
Right.
But
I'm not happy that I had to do all that time in prison.
No, I'm not happy about all that time in prison either.
People always forget about that.
Walk in the bathroom at 2 o'clock in the morning, you see 4 feet in the shower.
Yeah.
You're not happy about that shit.
No. No. It's like, where am I? I was constantly seeing stuff going, what did I do to myself?
What did I do?
So anyway, that guy, that video is actually doing great. It's got like over 30,000.
Oh,
that's nice.
Sunday?
Yeah, since in 2 days. So in just over 2 days, over 30,000 views. Right. On a StreamYard. But we did it like a month or so ago, and then after just as we did it, he realizes, wait a second, I haven't been sentenced yet. And so I'm sitting there talking to him like we were still on the thing. I turned off the recording. Or did you hear that conversation, or had I shut off the recording? No, I shut it off. He asked me. Yeah, I did shut it because I remember he goes, are you recording? I said, no, I shut it off. He goes, yeah, listen, the more I think about this, he goes, can you hold this for a little bit? And I was like, and keep in mind too, as he's telling the story, like I don't hear the whole 2-hour story. Like I heard pieces of it. Sounds good. He sent me some documents. I read them. It looks legit. Let's go. Like I'm not, I'm not Woodward and Bernstein here. I mean, this is a fucking YouTube show. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. So as he's talking, I start to realize like he was raided. They arrested him. He got out. He this, he that. And I'm like, okay, so when are you, so what'd you get? He's like, oh, I haven't been sentenced yet. And I'm thinking.
And here you are talking about this shit.
And we kept talking because I thought something, he's going to say something's going to happen. I was like, so you haven't been sent? No, my lawyer's saying I'm going to get this much time, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay,
they're going to max your ass out if they hear this.
Yeah, when are you getting sentenced? And then so once we shut it off, he starts thinking about it. And he goes, yeah, listen, I'm thinking about this. Matt, I'm maybe, yeah, can you hold this now that I think about it? And I was like, he goes, because I would really hate to be being sentenced and they start playing this. And I was like, yeah, that might be an issue. That might be. But he ended up, so it was so funny is he ended up contacting me, whatever, a week ago?
Yeah.
Like a week ago. So it had been like almost 3 weeks. And he contacted me, he said, hey, I was sentenced. And
lower end of the guidelines?
No, you got 5 years. Okay. He got the mandatory minimum. Okay. Keep in mind, they couldn't, it's through the internet. So they had ordered some stuff from him, tracked it back, and rated it as off.
Which is not difficult to do that.
Right. Yeah. So he didn't think it was going to be as easy as it was.
They never do.
But he had but then again, think about it. He wants to be sentenced because he had a much longer run than they knew.
Get it over with.
Yeah, like he's realizing you guys got me for these packages. Like I need to plead guilty to this.
Exactly.
Because if they really look into it, like what if they end up finding out this is the run? It was just right now it's just this, and you can minimize it. And you don't have the stuff, and so he pled guilty, got 5 years, and then we talked about him going in, and and he's a big guy, shaved head, beard.
He'll be fine.
Chubby. And he looks very soft. So I was like, listen, do yourself a favor. Don't go into, probably going to go to low. Don't go in and say like, I don't want to, if somebody says, what are you here for? Don't say, my lawyer said not to talk about it.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't say computer crime.
Yeah,
that's
don't
a mistake.
do that. Oh, I know that for a fact. That's a mistake. Don't say that.
Don't tell them a whole bunch of information, but be specific, but do tell them exactly, this is what I'm here for.
Yeah.
I said, so that's it. And yeah, he's,
don't play Billy Badass. Don't do that.
Yeah. Don't borrow money. Don't gamble.
Don't gamble. Don't borrow money.
Don't talk shit about people.
Understand that there's a spot in the TV room. You just can't go in there.
No.
And start watching.
Oh my God, there was a guy. Listen, let me tell you right now. I tell you this. I don't know if you had one of these guys. We would have some guy show up. I think I told you this. We'd have like a white guy would show up. A soft looking white guy would show up. He's 50-something years old, soft looking, scared. Comes in. They come in around just after or just before count, right?
Right.
So they come in, and then they get their cell. They're still wearing their slacks and a white big torn up T-shirt, and they're looking, So he's got flip flops on, and he's walking around. So they would come in, and then everybody just kind of ignores him.
Right.
And then they go to chow. They come back. They lay in their bed and cry. Then the next morning, pretty much regardless of what crime you've committed, that's typically the first night in prison. You just lay there like I slept like a baby. Well, you sound like you were sniffling a little bit. And then or sometimes that night, usually that night when they come back and they lock everybody down, they start to work their way into the TV room.
Right.
Or the next morning, they would walk in the white TV room.
Right.
And then
the NASCAR room.
Yeah. They come and they sit down. And we had a guy, they called him Kenny King. And what's so funny is like his initials were like KKK. They were like, yeah, they were. So it was like Kenny King. So we were like Kenny, Kevin King. And so Kenny would go, the guy would come in and sit down. We'd be watching the morning news, waiting to leave. And all of a sudden Kenny would go, and we listen. I knew it so well. When a guy would walk in and sit down, I'd get up and leave because I thought I don't want to be here for this humiliation. And it was always the same thing. He'd go, "Listen up, homeboy," and the guy would always, and he'd say, "I don't know what you're here for, but if it got anything to do with pictures, little kids are looking at video or touching somebody, you can't be in this room. You understand? They go, oh, no, I'm here for Medicare fraud. Do you understand? Look, you got about 3 days to come up with something that shows something. And they'd be like, okay. And here's the worst thing. You knew if he was lying because he wouldn't even come back.
Right.
Like if he really was there for Medicare fraud or for selling drugs or something, 3, 4, 5 days later, he's got something in the mail. He's walking around going, boom, that's what my charge is.
There you go.
You know, I got 10 years for
but most of the time
guns.
they wouldn't come back.
Right. But if they had nothing, then they just don't come back.
You see, I was the guy. So when I got there, it was
That's horrible.
it was
I want to be in that position. I used to think, Kenny, you've got to be miserable.
I was the guy. That was my job. Brett, go talk to this one. So it was that conversation. But I tried to be nice. Hey man, don't know if you're in here for something that's fucked up, but if you are, now's the time to tell me. Don't care what it is, but if you lie, those guys over there will fucking kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a nice guy. I want to be. I hear you.
I'm not violent.
It's society's fault. I get it. I got you. I hear you. It's a horrible thing, but there's no rules.
Fucking kill you.
What's so funny is Kenny would come to me and he'd go, Cox, and I'm like. And it's not like Kenny was even a big guy. Kenny was tiny. Kenny was like 5'5" or something. He was tiny. He weighed probably 140 pounds, but it was just hate filled. And he would Cox, and I'd be like, cry. What? Yeah, Kenny, what's up? Go talk to that guy over there. Why?
Because he's saying this.
Well, because he would say, he says he's here for fraud.
Yeah.
And I look over and I go, fuck. Because if he said drugs, then they don't ask me.
Right.
Kenny can talk to
But
him.
all the pedophiles said computer crime and credit card fraud.
Yeah, fraud.
Every single one of them. Right.
Yeah, I always love that. I told you. I must have told you that when I went up to the one guy.
No.
Oh, yeah. I went up to one guy. I go up to one guy and I said, hey, bro. I said, I heard you were here for fraud. He's like, yeah. I'm here for credit card fraud. I said, what were you charged? I said, that's what you were charged with? He goes, yeah, charged with credit card fraud. I went,
What's the actual charge?
That's the actual charge on your indictment, credit card fraud? He goes, yeah, it's credit card fraud. And I went, okay. At this point,
you did the bank thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So Kenny comes slowly walking down the hall, and he's walking up slowly. And I went, so what did you do? And he goes, I was removing money out of credit cards. And I went, no, I get that. It's credit card fraud you were doing. But how are you doing it? Like, were you in like a position like at a bank where you were able to charge the credit cards? Or did you work for the credit card company? Or were you manufacturing credit cards? Like, were you using an access device of some kind? And he goes, it's not a learning experience. And just then Kenny walked up and I go, he's a chomo. And Kenny goes, I knew it. And I walk off. Kenny comes up. Kenny goes, how'd you know? I said, I've never met a fraudster in my life that didn't want to brag about how smart he was to let you know I'm super smart and this is how I did it and I figured it out. I said, there's no such thing as credit card fraud. It's access device fraud, it's bank fraud, it's financial institution fraud. There's dozens, it's wire fraud, something. I said, there is no charge that. And I asked him 3 times, and he said it over and over again. And I said, yeah, so no. And so then this happened all the time. I remember this other time, this guy was, this is how good I was getting at it.
This is how good I was getting at it.
And I felt bad. I don't want to put somebody in a position where
he's being... But you knew, the thing is you knew who the chomos were walking off the bus.
Oh, yeah. And what's so funny, too, was how they would congregate. They would group, and it was, and not just that, even if you had 4 guys that I knew all 4 of you were lying, you've actually convinced other people that it's not true, that you 4 fucking guys hung out together. You're always talking about how you hate Joes, but you guys are all hanging out, and you're all lying. You said you're here for Medicare fraud. You said you're here for wire fraud. You said you're here for pot. You said you're here for this, and you guys all hang out together, and you talk about Joes. Yeah. So this one guy, one time I'm sitting there, Kenny King comes up to me, he goes, Cox, see that guy over there? And I looked over, and I was like, oh, yeah. And he goes, says he's here for he said some kind of scheme, I go, Ponzi scheme? He goes, yeah, that's it, Ponzi scheme. And I went, okay. And he said, I want to go talk to him, see if he's a Cho. And I go, no, he's a con man. And he goes, Man, you just looked at him. Go talk to him. And I said, I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to tell you right now. I said, that's a con man. And you could fucking, the look, listen, this dude, not a big guy, checking out everybody walking by. His back is kind of towards the
Yep.
you know, in the corner, kind of towards the, just checking everybody out, not being a jerk, but the look on his face was, he was in a horrible environment,
Analyzing
a dangerous
everything.
environment, analyzing everything, and confident.
Right.
Not a big guy.
Right.
Guy's my height. But I looked at that dude and I was like, huh. Walked right up to him, said, hey, bro. I said, you here for some kind of a Ponzi scheme, a fraud or something? I said, Kenny told me that you were. He's like, yeah, $57 million, largest Ponzi scheme. And immediately went into reading off his resume. Did it for 15 years. But just immediately starts bragging about it. I thought, yeah.
Because that's what you do.
Right.
You have to give your resume. It's like, damn, I'm here for this. Bam, 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 bam. And I did this. Bam, bam. And they called me this. Bam, bam, bam.
Right. Starts telling me all the papers he was in, all this. He was just proud of it. How much gold he dug up, how much, and I was just like, damn, like you're overboard. Like you're as bad. Like I thought I had it. I thought I had you pegged, but fuck.
That's me.
You know, yeah. Good times. Good times. What's going on? What are we at?
1:18.
An hour and 18 minutes?
Yeah.
That's it? That's not bad.
Not bad at all. Not bad at all. So what did you say about Frank Abagnale? Since we're talking about crime and the fake son of a bitches that are out there.
First of all, you should talk to that guy.
I know him.
Oh,
we're at the same conference in next month.
He's an interesting guy, right?
I've spoken to him on the phone. We had a Zoom meeting as well.
Did you do a podcast?
Did not do recording. Did not.
I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know how you're going to run your show, but you might.
And so what happened was the ACFE last year they were like, will you come in and keynote this? Like, absolutely, let's do that, because I love the ACFE. They don't pay shit most of the time and everything. I was like, yeah, absolutely.
You understand he's going to put this probably in?
That's fine.
Okay.
I still love him. All right. but so I'm like, absolutely. So didn't know who any of the speakers were, anything else like that. So this has been probably 6 weeks ago, the woman who brought me in, she was like, I just wanted you to know that Frank Abagnale is coming as well. And she sent me a note on LinkedIn. I was like, well, that means they're going to kick me out because Frank Abagnale refuses to meet me. So I sent her a note back and I was like, hey, I understand if you're dismissing me, I understand completely. Frank's a bigger draw and everything else. And she writes back, she's like, no, you're there with Frank. And I'm like, seriously? You know what I've said about this guy.
Right.
You know I'm going to bury his ass. And she was like, it'll be fine. I'm like, okay.
The whole industry's ready.
Yeah.
Right.
So 4 days later, this LeVere guy, he messages me. And he's like, I'm showing up at this conference too. So I started, and he's on this pretend podcast. I'm like, holy shit. They're all planning on burying Abagnale all of a sudden. So LeVere and I talked, or however you say his last name, we talked. He's a great guy. And he was like, have you watched my show? I was like, no, I've not watched your show. He's like, well, I've watched your show. And, so he was talking to me. He's like, I'm planning on giving all my proceeds to the victims of Frank Abagnale. And he's like, what do you think about that? And I was like, shit, if you can do it, I can do it too. Let's go.
Okay.
So, of course, 2 days later, Frank Abagnale
drops out. Right.
But, I mean, it looks like the industry's actually finally taken, that to heart, that he didn't really do anything. But now that being said,
the fact that he's done something. Yeah. Like so first of all, I like to say that I read his book in prison.
Same here.
Oh, not once, but over and over and over again. Right. Multiple times. I can't say that I read it in its entirety. I probably read it in its entirety 3 or 4 times at least.
Right.
But I read sections of, if you add up all the sections, I probably read that book a dozen times. Sure. Like just to see how they condense things and how he, like, I really, really loved that book. And then I even read his second book.
See, I didn't read the second one.
Second book was pretty good too, although it mostly just talks about scams in general. The Art of the Steal.
Art of the Steal. Then he has a third one they did with AARP, which
I didn't know that.
He didn't write that one at all.
Okay. I didn't even know that. But and I always, I had been on podcasts where I talked about Frank Abagnale. And then guys were in the comment section were saying, no, he actually worked for, because I was saying he actually did like all of his time. Like in the first one, he basically does, he gets turned down for parole several times and then he gets out on parole. And I said, so the truth is people think, oh, he got arrested and very quickly, based on the movie, they let him out to work for the FBI. I said, the truth is he actually did all of his time, got out on parole. And then he talks about how there were issues. In the second book, he talks about how there were issues on parole. He kept getting fired. And that the PO would show up and get him fired. Another time he worked
I remember reading about some of the issues that he had. He worked in a grocery store, got dismissed from that.
Right. Like, the problem is, who knows if any of that's true anymore. And I liked the story, and so when Levine, I think it's Levine, whatever. When we talked, he was talking about how all of these things. There was always one thing that bothered me, and it has always bothered me, and I kind of just shrugged it off, like, okay, well, you don't really know,
right?
So, and it was always the toilet in the airplane. So when on the escape. He gets in the toilet and he sneaks out through the toilet, and he somehow or another gets into the gear where the landing gear assembly is, and then he jumps out through the landing assembly and takes off. And I always remember thinking, well, I would think it would be a closed system. That would be separate.
Right.
And I would think, well, maybe sometimes they have those panels that have been bolted on. I was like, but it's not like he didn't have like a wrench with him. Right. And I'm sitting there going, well, obviously, it's the suspension of disbelief.
Sure,
I see it, I believe it, I want to believe it.
My issue with him the entire time was the escape from Atlanta, because I know U.S. Marshals, and they've told me how that shit actually operates. There was no forgotten paperwork, as he claimed at that point. No. Because you've got two marshals that deliver you there, and you've got the checks and balances there. So Abagnale was claiming that the reason he was able to escape, they didn't deliver the paperwork. The marshals didn't. They had forgotten the paperwork. So he was able to social engineer his way out of the prison at that point.
Right. He has the girl. He gets the FBI card, and actually they call. And he says, "Hey, I'm working with the FBI as a CI, or I'm an FBI agent. Let me talk to my partner." And they actually let him go to the car to have a conversation. He jumps in the car and takes off.
Right.
Like, it's a whole thing. And granted, it's the 70s. Like, things were a lot more laxed. But even when I was watching that, it was. But he would throw these little tiny details in there where he said later. In the newspaper article came out where they said that I had actually was a violent escape, that I'd harmed somebody, pulled a gun, or done some things.
Right. He
said, which was later disproven. And it was like those are the little kinds of things that make the story seem more real. Like he's an amazing liar.
He is, absolutely is.
But Levine, the guy that I interviewed, he was like. He and the other guy that had written the book about it, because Levine didn't write the book, he just did the podcast based on the book. He was saying, like, he didn't understand why a documentary hadn't been made, why they didn't jump on it. And he was saying it was like, and I was like, yeah, right.
So you interviewed Javier. Did you interview
Javier? Yes.
Alan Logan too, or not?
No, just Javier.
Okay.
So he was saying he believed the reason people had not jumped all over it was because it was like being told that, there's no Santa Claus. Like, people don't want to believe it. They don't. And I admittedly, like, I had guys in the comment section before where I had talked on concrete. I talked on concrete about Abagnale and how he'd done all his time. And he did, because people were saying, oh, you're like Frank Abagnale.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, no, because Frank Abagnale didn't get his sentence reduced.
Right.
Even he did all his time. In the movie, they say they let him out, but he really did all of his time, according to the book. And in fact, he did all of his time because in general, he just had a bunch of little tiny bits. But the point is that, like, I actually got my sentence cut for writing an ethics course, for working with the FBI, for writing these doing 2 different courses and being interviewed. So, and then this guy said that there's a whole thing on where he's talking in front of like the FBI, I think, and it's on YouTube, and he's talking about working as an undercover with the FBI.
Right. And that is,
I've never heard that before in my life.
No.
It's like, he's getting more and more inventive.
Right.
So the problem is you listen to that guy, and it's disappointing that he's taken he's taken one or two small things that he did and he's ballooned them into these massive stories. Now, I wouldn't blame him for what the movie did,
right?
For what Spielberg did. Like, I wouldn't blame him because they're going to do whatever they want to do.
Well, you know that now. I mean, you've talked to production companies. I have too. Once they buy the story, they do whatever the fuck they want to do with that. You have no say-so in that anymore. That's done.
But the 2 books?
Yeah. That's a problem.
Right. So really, he was just a low-level guy. He's been arrested for stealing a car. He's been... Oh, and Javier actually talked about how he had kind of conflated 2 separate stories in the book where he takes the stewardesses on this... And that scam in the book, that's a great scam.
It is.
Like, I could see that working.
Yeah,
that's why I sat there and I thought, wow, that would work.
Yeah.
Based on what he was doing, that was a great way to maximize what he was doing. But the point is that Javier said that what really happened from their investigation was that Frank Abagnale at one point had worked at like a nursery, and everybody was saying, oh, we should all they were all kind of friends and said we should do something over the weekend. And he took them all to Puerto Rico, flew them to Puerto Rico. And they said, like a couple days before they were supposed to leave, or a day before they were supposed to leave or something, something went wrong, and he immediately was like, look, we got to go. We got to get on the plane. We got to get back. I got to get back. And he rushed everybody back there. And as soon as they got back there, he stole the station wagon to the daycare or school, whatever it was, and took off and left. And they never saw him again. And they did a report saying, hey, this guy stole our fucking car.
Right.
So that is kind of, and he also would go, he'd dress up like a pilot. He would go to universities and he would interview sorority girls or college girls to be stewardesses for Pan Am, let's say. I think it was Pan Am. They said he also would do physical exams.
I read that bit. Yeah.
Wow. So,
which none of that gets talked about.
No. Nobody brings that up.
Right.
So yeah, there was a bunch of stories that I was like, okay, so he kind of conflated the movie thing where and it's also in the book where he does this thing, goes to a college and he interviews all these women and he picks some of them and he flies them all over to Europe, and then he gives them checks and he also gives them reimbursement checks that they have to cash and give him the cash. So they're doing this everywhere they go. He's also not paying for any of the photography. He's telling them to bill Pan Am. So he's running up photography bills all over Europe. The women are thrilled. They get to go to Europe for a month, but they also end up making him like $20,000-$30,000 in cash because they're cashing checks, thinking it's just a part of how this works. We cash the stuff, we have to pay for our own fees, but they reimburse us. They give us a check, we cash it and give it to him.
So you read the book how many times? 12.
Yeah, let's say roughly 6 to 12. Yeah,
and that's my problem with Frank is that the reason I'm a speaker these days is Frank Abagnale.
Oh
yeah.
What? Because he's paved the way.
That path.
Yeah.
You know, when I was working for Secret Service that entire time, I'm going to get out and I'm going to do exactly what this son of a bitch was doing. I'm going to speak. I'm going to consult.
Well, why doesn't he want to be on the same?
So with Frank, and I found that out when I started working for AARP, Frank doesn't do Q&A sessions because
he didn't want to answer any questions.
He can't answer the questions.
Right.
All right. The book that he wrote for AARP, Scam Me If You Can, he didn't write a single word on it. He comes to AARP and he's like, hey, you can have the book. I'll give it to you free. Just hire me to work. And he charges AARP $20,000 a day.
Jeez.
And he screws them over. He did during that entire, he worked for him for I think a year and a half. And during that point in time, he had 2 Q&A sessions. And during those Q&A, he answers the questions about as bad as you possibly could.
Right.
Gives advice that no one on the fucking planet would do. Doesn't support the advice because he doesn't know anything he's talking about. And it looks like what's going on these days is somebody gives him talking points.
Right.
So he gets up there, he rehearses his speech, he gives his story, gives a few talking points at the end, doesn't really understand a damn thing he's talking about, walks away with his $30,000 for the speech and goes like that.
Right.
Is what's going on. But the first time I was supposed to meet the guy, he was doing a podcast for AARP. I forgot what the name of that damn thing was, but I was supposed to meet. I flew into Washington to meet him, and he calls in sick that day. Yeah.
Okay. Why?
Because he didn't.
He just doesn't want to have a conversation with you that's gonna. where it's going to be obvious.
I think it's that whole thing where
a fisherman knows a
a
fisherman.
fisherman knows a fisherman. You know immediately. Are you full of shit or do you know what you're talking about?
Right.
And that's the problem. So he doesn't do anything like that. Javier, easy enough because they had Javier. So Frank Abagnale was going to be opening keynote. The next speaker was Javier.
Oh, he would have walked in and just gutted him. Yeah, Frank would have to go on first because he's not going on second.
He's not going on second. So first, second was Javier. And Abagnale was contractually obligated to it. Everything else for this conference violates the contract because it's like, fuck no, I'm not showing up to that shit.
I am. You know what's okay? Sorry, go ahead.
But I did my show. I've spoke about Frank now twice about this fake criminal stuff. First time I came down pretty hard on the guy. Second time I'm like, he still defrauded a whole shitload of people with this story.
Yeah.
So he's very effective in what he's doing.
Yeah. Who gets out of prison and says as a petty criminal and reinvents himself as a con man to do keynote speaking and get paid for it. Like that is, especially if you don't have the pedigree.
Exactly. And becomes arguably more famous than Charles Ponzi.
Yeah. Everybody knows Catch Me If You Can. They might not know exactly Frank Abagnale, but a lot of people do.
Right.
So I'd say if somebody knows the movie Catch Me If You Can, probably 25% of them can actually say Frank Abagnale.
Exactly.
But at the very least, he can say, "Would you see the movie Catch Me If You Can?" Oh yeah,
that's a good movie,
you're the guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and you're right. Like I said, yeah, not everybody knows what a Ponzi or what a Ponzi scheme
so
is.
So he small time crook to most successful con man ever.
Yeah.
With the Catch Me If You Can story.
Yeah.
But also, he actually does some good along the way, right? He's got 11 patents for check security.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Belt. So and he raised awareness across the board on security for checks.
Right. And Javier said like he came up with he's legitimately got like a securities company or whatever it is.
Yeah.
He's legitimately, and apparently it does decent work. Like he's like there's nothing. He's like they looked into that. He's like there's nothing out there that says that that's a scam. Like it's a legitimate company.
So how are you supposed to look at that? The he's built his entire life on this foundation of lies, but he goes off and he does some good. And that's one of the things that he says.
And makes a hell of a lot of money doing it.
Hell of a lot of money.
It's easy to do good things.
If you're profitable.
Yeah.
But, he actually said that in, I don't know if you saw that ambush interview that Javier did with him.
Yeah, I did saw that. It's only like a minute, like 90 seconds.
But, Abagnale makes that statement. I wish that people would judge me on what I've done with my life, not what I did with it way back then.
Right.
Which I'm like, okay, dude, I kind of get you. I kind of get you on that.
Yeah.
I still don't know how to view it all, but I'm like, okay.
I think, what's funny is it's like cheating on your wife. This is another one of those. Remember, so I give these examples sometimes, and like when we were not on camera, like you're like, yeah, don't go with that one again. Like I said something the other day. The guy made a comment about people with like a thyroid problem. Like, well, it's not her fault. He was talking about like his sister like was super overweight. He's angry with this particular. It's a fraud that's happening, and he's angry. He's talking, and he shows a picture of his sister. He is, and I went, he goes, you notice anything about her? And I thought, well, she's like, I didn't know what he wanted me to say, but all I could think of was she's a big one.
She's big boned.
She's a big girl. And he goes, it's not her fault. She has, thyroid something such and such. And I said, I don't buy that. I said because I know for a fact that I said in all the pictures I've seen of like concentration camps, there's never like one fat person that they say, yeah, she's getting as much food as everybody else, but she has a thyroid issue, so she can't lose weight. Like I said, I don't think that's the way it works. And so anyway, afterward, he says to me,
probably don't want to use that example.
Afterward, he said, I understood what you were saying, and it was funny. He said, but you might want to stay away from anything that has to do with skinny people in a concentration camp.
That's true.
And I thought,
that's true.
Let's
edit that out.
Like that's not. You took it wrong. So, but Frank, I don't know where I was going with this.
Cheating wife.
Thank you. So it's kind of like if it's like the guy. Listen, people will like really a woman in general, and I think men for the most part, they will forgive like infidelity, but what they're more upset about every time when I was younger, not now. I'm an adult now. But when I was, in my teens or 20s and I would run around with my girlfriend and get caught, the few times what I realized was when you just deny it, it drags out for 6 months to a year. They never let it go.
Right.
But if you just say, yeah, look, okay, I did this and we were having fights and we're not doing well and I thought we were going to break up and I saw your friend Jennifer and she's always flirted with me. And so, yeah, I went back to her place and I hit it. Yeah, I met. Yeah. She's not a good friend to you, by the way. She had horrible things to say. If you just own up
lay it
to
on
it,
her.
Yeah,
She's not a good friend to you.
Yeah. I said the whole time I said this isn't right. But if you just own up to it, then it kind of shuts it. And if you're like, look,
just get it out.
Listen, I got caught like mid-act banging this.
Literally mid-act.
Well, no, I mean, not. So I was, going, it was working out. It was just, it was actually a Buccaneers cheerleader. I mean, when am I going to get a chance to hit a Buccaneers cheerleader?
Buccaneers cheerleader.
You got to. I mean, to me, that's like you get a pass.
I mean,
I should have gotten a pass, right? Like, so I mean, I'm never going to have this opportunity again. Yeah, I like you. We're good, but. So
yeah,
anyway,
I love you, but it's a bus.
For God's sakes. So it's just happening. And I remember we're naked and boom, I'm just, things are just going in good. And just then I hear teet teet. And I thought, the alarm system, the door opens and I went, oh God, I never got that key back from Jana. And I was like, and I remember she was like, oh my God, is that, and the girl I was dating was a fitness trainer. And she goes, is that the fitness girl? Is that, I was like, wait a second. I get up and go in there. And literally, my girlfriend's got this chick's purse out dumping out her stuff, flipping it open, looks at and starts screaming like she knows her, like she's like, he barely even knows her. She starts screaming, this, or yelling, and so the girl ends up coming and we scoop the stuff back in. The girl's got her clothes on. She takes it. She runs out the back. I turn around. She's like, did you fuck her?
No, I didn't.
No, but I look. I mean, I'm done. I said, yeah. You want to know the truth? I said, yeah. I was a little bit. I was starting. It was work. Things were going. It was happening. Yes, but you ruined it for me.
But
and I said, look, forget us. It's over. Just go. She says, but I love you. And then I couldn't get rid of her. She hugged me, and she stayed the night, and we dated again for the next 3 weeks, and we broke up again because we were always breaking up.
Right.
But the point is that listen, for the Frank, all that. But I'm bringing it back around. I see that disappointed look. Where's this going?
It's got to finish.
It's going. So to me, the denying or not addressing it, to me, one, you probably get a lot more if Abagnale were to just say, listen, let me tell you what happened. Yeah. And you still don't have to be that. Like you can say, look, this is what happened here. This is what happened here. This is what did when I wrote it with the Stan, Redding or whoever I wrote, when I wrote the book, was there embellishment? Absolutely, there was embellishment.
And it just got away from me over the years.
Got away. It kept going. I started getting the gigs. I was scared that if I corrected it at that point, I wouldn't get the gigs. I was making a good living. I have a wife. I have 4 beautiful children. Did I mess up? Should I have corrected it a long time ago? Absolutely. I was broke. I was in a bad spot. Here's what I did. I didn't correct it. I'm correcting it now. Right. My bad. You don't, here's what I have done with my life.
I mean, the dude's, 75, 76
right.
now?
Well, what do you say at that point? People are like, yeah, he owned up to it. What are you going to do?
Still like the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
that's what you do.
Why wouldn't you? Right. But to not address it, then what happens is it festers, it gets worse, it gets worse, it gets worse. And that's what happens.
I mean, so Alan Logan comes out with his book, nobody reads it. Let's be honest, nobody read the fucking thing.
Right.
But it continues to build traction.
Yeah.
Until now you've got the ACFE trying to do a hit piece on the guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going to shut him down completely. I mean, luckily I'm sure Frank's got more than enough money to just kick back.
What he's making on residuals and everything else.
I mean, listen, to be honest, at this point, you could kick back, do a video, and laugh about the whole thing. He could mock the whole thing. Yeah, that's what I did.
And be done with it.
He didn't even have to be apologetic if he didn't want to. He's like, I'm 75 years old. What are you gonna do?
I gotta ask. We know that the women want men to be honest with them.
Yes.
But do we want the women to be honest with us?
I don't want to know.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't need.
My deal is, did you give him a blowjob? That's going to end it right there.
To me, listen, I had a girlfriend. This is, I remember her name. I'm horrible with names too. Her name was Janine Hutchinson.
He said, I remember her name.
Yeah. She was so sweet. She was very nice. I dated her for a little bit when I was in college, the first year or so. And I remember she was going back to, I think she's from Wisconsin or something. I don't know. Anyway, she was going, one of the square states up north. So she's going back up there for like a month or two and then coming back. And I said, listen, I know your ex-boyfriend's up there. I know he's friends with all your friends.
Right.
I know all this. Like, we've been dating like a year or so. And I said, I know this. I said, I know there's no way you're going to see your friends and not end up seeing him. And she goes, probably. She said, yeah, probably. I said, so if things take the natural course of nature, I said, and you end up sleeping with this guy, I said, do me the favor and the courtesy of not letting me find out.
Right.
And she said, you'll never find out. And I said, okay.
Because she knew what time it was.
Yeah. She just laughed. She says, like, something's wrong with you. I'm just saying, I don't want to know.
Right.
Like, I don't want to know if something happens. She's
know.
like, nothing's going to happen.
As a man, that shit eats at you.
Yeah, I don't want to know.
Because I'm sitting there going, okay, you've told me this, but there's more.
Yeah. I hated it the whole time. Yes,
Yeah.
I know. The guy's 6'2". He weighs 195 pounds. He's got a full head of hair.
Right.
You hated it the whole time.
Whole time.
Okay.
Whole time. Guess
Now you're a liar too.
Yeah.
So yeah. yeah. I don't know. I need to call Jess. Actually, no, the more I think about it, I need to do this. I like to drop by every once in a while. Just pull in real quick in my little chick Jeep.
There you go.
And it bounces all over. They got this big thing, and I bounce up. I pull up. I jump out. And
Well, I ordered a Bronco.
Are you serious? They're fucking ridiculously expensive. The sticker price is $40. They're selling for $95.
I know. So here's the deal. I got October. I bought an Acura TLX Type S. Fantastic fucking vehicle. All right. Bought that ostensibly for the wife, and then my Bronco was arriving in January, which it did.
This just didn't have one of those Chinese chips in it. What?
No. My Bronco arrived the exact same day that
The tree fell?
No. The exact same day that Arcos, the company that was paying me upteen amounts of money to be the chief criminal officer, they decided that the economy was going bad, and they laid me off.
Whoa.
Yeah. So my Bronco got sold. It was black on black, the Wild Track, sticker on it, $73K. I was like, fucking love it.
How long had you ordered it?
It took 9 months to get it in. That's what it took.
Oh, so did you make money on the sale?
No, I didn't get it at all. Didn't buy the
Oh, okay. I thought you already paid it and just arrived.
No, and of course they marked it up $15K on top of that.
Of course, I was going to say, they probably sold it for $90.
Yeah, so that's my Bronco story. But, hey, are you going to come on my show?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get this in.
I went and looked at Bronco. This is scary.
They're nice vehicles.
They're not, because you know why? Online, it said it was like $38,000. I was like, this is great. I actually, listen, I went so far, I went and got a loan from I applied for the loan through my credit union.
Looking at the Badlands or what?
Huh?
Remember? Which version Bronco?
It was like the cheap one.
Okay.
It was the cheapest one.
Okay.
Two-door.
The 2 doors are nice. Mine was the 4.
Yeah.
Ragtop.
Are they all rag? This thing I had a hard top. They look like a kind of a rag top.
Yeah, I ordered the rag top because at that point the hard top hadn't been fixed. It was leaking. And so you had to get the rag top on it.
Okay, so I then drive out to the dealership. I get to the deal. I called them, by the way. You do the text thing, texting the guy, and the guy's like, yeah. I'm like, hey, what? I know the sticker price is this. Can you work on the sticker price? He's like, well, we could talk about it when you get here. So he's making me believe that the sticker price is the price. Like, I didn't know what had happened with cars. I get out there. They had added put a little lift on it and put like a roll bar in the back or something. Like some stuff I don't want, I don't need, but I don't care. It's there. And somehow or another, that extra $2,500 worth of bullshit they added on ended up jacking it up to 72 or
From
70.
38 to 72.
Yeah, it's like $75,000 or something. And I went, I was like, are are you fucking with me? We were driving. As we were driving out of the place, right? So the guy's taking me out, and he said, so why'd you decide to get the Bronco? I said, well, I mean, I couldn't beat it. I mean, $38,000. I love these things. And he goes, oh, no. He said, that's sticker price. And I went, right. He said, no, this has got the upgraded such and such. We put that on. He said, so this one's like $74,000 or something, whatever it was. And I went, what? And I said, bro, just turn around right here.
Just take me back to
And he goes, you don't want to drive it? I said, no. He goes, well, maybe we could talk about the price. I said, you ain't talking it down to $38,000. I'm ready to pay sticker. I'm not paying. He's like, well, let's see what the numbers come to. What the numbers come to? Are you special number? Are you financing it for 100 years? Like, I don't care. I don't want that. I'm not doing that. Turn around. And he was like, are you serious? I said, yeah.
Put you on 96 months. You'll be all right.
Ridiculous. So I had him turn around. I mean, I went in. I did they didn't pull my credit, but I did say, he said, well, let me at least get to the numbers. I said, all right, bro. But that takes 20 minutes. And then after I got the first set of numbers, I said, yeah, I'm done. Give me my keys.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know where Paul is. I'm gonna cut the shit. I know you got my keys. Come on, man. Don't make me be an asshole.
So you like the Jeep?
My Jeep?
Yeah.
The little tiny baby girl Jeep?
I've not seen your Jeep.
It's in the.
I'll have to look.
It's the little white. It's a chick Jeep. Like, I mean, you hit it, you punch the gas, and it goes. Woo. It doesn't go though. There's no it's not like it throws your Jess will be like, did you hit the gas? And I'm like, that's me hitting the gas. And she's like, oh, it's so bad. I'm like, all right,
it's so bad. It's so bad.
We bought furniture for Jess's daughter, and I had to rent a U-Haul. That U-Haul had more pickup than my Jeep. And I mean, I'm not even it's not like I'm like, oh, I'm kind of, no. You hit the U-Haul and it was, like, you really kind of threw you back a little bit.
So you hear it now, kids. He needs to sell more of these.
Yes.
So he can get a more powerful vehicle.
Yeah.
Remember, stranger danger.
I feel like that book will lose me a lot of people. People will read that and be like, you've got some issue. Like, it's not, I mean, it is hilarious though, but it's disturbing too. All right. Can I ask you a question real quick before we get into it? Because this is a question I get all the time.
Okay.
I want to know how you answer it. Well, I've got multiple questions I get all the time.
Come on, shoot them out, man.
You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the questions people ask me, and people always look shocked when I answer them. Right. And I always think, oh, that's the wrong answer. Like, that's not what they expected. So one of those is, do you ever think about committing fraud?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, if people ask me that, I'm like, every single day.
Dude, pandemic, it was like, shit, that's some money there. It's like, damn.
I'll see a real estate commercial where they're buying real estate sight unseen.
Oh, Jesus.
And I'm like, oh, stop it, bro. Stop.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, oh, God, dear God, what are you doing, man? What's happening?
Well, that criminal mindset never leaves. It never leaves. It's always there. So I am asked that. I'm also asked, would I ever commit a crime again?
Right.
And they, news or whoever's asking that wants you to say no. And the answer is not no.
No, it's never no for me either.
That's right. It's like, I'm recovering. The longer I go without committing a crime, the chances are I'll keep going. But right now, I'm just recovering from all this bullshit.
I actually told my probation officer. Well, I've actually told several people. Did you take RDAP?
Yes, I took RDAP.
Okay.
I almost caused a riot at Fort Worth Prison taking RDAP.
So I've told the doctor that was running the program this, and I told my probation officer. I was like, yeah, I know I'm going to bust my ass. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to bust my ass for the next year, hopefully pull some shit together, get myself on my feet. And I kept saying, I guess I said a year too many times. And she goes, well, what happens if it takes longer than a year? And I go, if it takes longer than a year? And she goes, yeah. I go, if in a year from now, I'm living in someone's spare room, I'm taking the bus to work, I can barely pay my bills. Like that? And she goes, yeah. I said, I'm going to commit a massive, massive fraud.
That's what I was about to say. Then fuck it. Balls to the wall at that point.
Yeah, if I can't feed myself in a year from now, then I gave it a good shot.
Okay, so that is the answer, right? I mean, unless we've got, I wanted to turn my life around, but if you don't have that support group, if you don't have a way to make a living, you leave prison with the exact same tools you go in with. So you're going to do what you need to do to survive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fact.
Yeah.
So, that's what the justice system and family members and friends and anyone who interviews you, they don't understand that. They're like, oh, no, I would never commit a crime again.
No. Listen. You would. And here's what I told the doctor, by the way, was I had said to her, I said, she goes, well, crime is never an option. I went, oh. I said, listen, let's assume that your husband leaves you for his secretary. Let's assume the economy goes south. I said, which we all know it can. Let's assume
and it is.
Right. Well, at that time it wasn't. I go, let's assume that I said they don't have the budget to hire people like you at $100,000. I said, and you go out and you try and get a job in a bad economy and you can't. You find yourself and your 2 kids living in your car with no support from anybody. I said, and there is a loaf of bread 4 feet inside of the supermarket's front door. I said, if you steal that loaf of bread, your kids live another week. I said, you wouldn't do it? I go, the difference between you and me, I said, is the bar for committing crime for me is just lower than yours.
Right. I mean,
everybody will do it.
Everyone will do it. That's a fact. And and of course that's the argument. And what people don't understand is, okay, yeah, you'll steal that bologna, you'll steal that bread. But if you're going to steal bologna, shit, why would I eat bologna if I could have steak?
Yeah, I don't have to. If I'm willing to do this, I don't have to live in my car anymore.
Exactly right.
My kids deserve better. So here's the other question is where, and this always kills me too, is they're like, well, man, when you were on the run, you must have been like, were you scared all the time? Were you worried? Was it horrible? And I always say, and I know this is the wrong one. I'm always like, bro, honestly, like the best period of my life was being on the run. Yeah. I loved being on the run.
Have you read Shantaram or not?
No.
So Indian guy, Australian guy, true story, but he novelizes it. He escapes from an Australian maximum security prison. New Zealand maximum security prison. Makes his way to India and starts running black markets for medical goods, everything else like that. But he talks about that escape and being on the run and how every single day was like the highest day of his life because he's free, he's beat the system again another day, everything else. And so with me, it was... I took a road trip. I did the Route 66 cruise and spent a lot of time in Vegas, a lot of time out in LA. But every single day, I mean, it was very lonely, but at the same time, it was like, shit, I'm beating the system every day.
Yeah.
And I was
it's
okay.
just you and your wits
That's
against
it.
everything. There's nobody, something goes wrong, there's nobody I can call.
That's it.
So I've got no help. I have to figure out how to do every single thing by myself.
And see, but that's the thing, right? I mean, when I that criminal mindset, we are used to doing things on our own, and we have the will to do it.
Right.
And a lot of it, I gave an interview just yesterday. I forgot who I was talking to, but it's just that sheer force of will that sees a lot of this stuff through.
Yeah. Okay. So let's rewind here. Where were you? Where were you born?
Oh, dude, I'm from Hazard, Kentucky. So if you've seen the news lately, all those floods, that's the epicenter of all the floods, and that's where I was born. I come from Hazard. It's coal country. My dad was a helicopter pilot in the U.S. Army, captain. So I grew up overseas in Germany, throughout the 50 states, things like that. My dad was forced out of the military. They did a downsizing. He was forced out around 78, 79, becomes a coal miner. And at that point in time, you were paid pretty well, except they were on strike all the time. So it was feast and famine frequently. My mom... So my mom was just kind of a fuck. Addicted to opiates. She cheated on my dad constantly. This is a woman, I talk about it in my presentations, but no shit, man. She would bring men home in front of him. He would sit there and cry, beg her not to do it. And by God, she'd do it anyway. Have these conversations with him. Hey, I'm leaving you for him. And she'd be gone a couple of weeks, come back, and he'd take her back. I mean, this was my dad. He was a good guy, but if you want to call him a cuck, you can call him that. But
he was just overwhelmingly in love with this woman.
Yeah, and he grew up in a really good family, When he went to tell his mom, he tells me the story today. When he went to tell his mom that he was about to marry my mom, she literally passes out. And don't do it, Ray. Don't do it. Not only that, but when he goes to tell my mom's dad, Paul, that he's going to marry her, Paul sits him down and he's like, Ray Jean, if you knew what I knew, you'd take off running and you wouldn't look back. and he wouldn't listen.
Right.
So he marries her. She was definitely the criminal in the family. This is a woman, she steals a Caterpillar D9 bulldozer at one point. She takes a slip and fall in a store at another. This is a woman that used to go to the drugstore. She'd get the empty capsules and fill them up with bullshit to try to sell them as speed and amphetamines and everything else. Anything and everything to try to get money. My life, my first crime, I was 10. My mom had left my dad. Let's backtrack. So my dad was a good guy, because I've not told this story before, but my dad was a good guy. He never really committed any crime on his own. If my mom wanted to commit a crime, he'd co-sign on to it.
Right.
So yeah, let's try that bullshit. The 2 times that he tries to really go in to commit a crime, the first time was, we won't do the first time. The second time, he's watching 60 Minutes one night, and they've got a show about the Miami drug trade. You know, they're showing the stacks of cash, the tables of coke, and everything else. And this man is just focused on that damn segment. And we're all sitting there kind of watching it like, what the hell, Dad? And my mom's looking at my dad like, Ray, are you okay? So he gets through watching the segment, turns around, looks at her, and he's like, I think I need to go to Miami and be a police officer. And she was like, maybe you do. And his plan was to get down to Miami, become a cop, happen upon some drug deal someplace, keep the cash, they keep the drugs, retire. And my point was, won't they just shoot your ass? And he was like, no, it won't happen. So they sell everything they've got, round up like, I don't know, $6,000, rent a U-Haul, head south on I-75, end up in Miami the night the 1980 riots broke out in Miami, that same night. So city was exploding, everything else. My mom's like, holy shit. We get in a Days Inn right across the street from all these homeless people. And she's like, kids, don't go outside. So my dad goes to cop school the first day, comes back, and he's like, I think it's going to be all right. Second day he comes back, he's like, shit, we got to get out of here. So it turns out the Miami-Dade cops, the real ones, had burst into the training session, arrested like 6 people with outstanding warrants, and they all had the same idea of happening upon a drug deal and keeping the cash.
Right.
So from there we head back up I-75. They're running out of money. And they decide on Panama City, Florida, because when they were kids, they had spent spring break there. So go there. My dad, the only job he could get was as a 7-Eleven store clerk, making $140 a week. My mom was an LPN. She gets a job in a nursing home, keeps the job long enough to see my dad off to work so she can start cheating on his ass again. And we slowly go broke. That's a lot of the motivation for me over the years. I mean, when we were in Panama City when I was a kid, we would be without power, without water. We would literally be out in the backyard of the house we were renting, catching water in buckets so we could flush the toilet, brush our teeth, shit like that.
How old were you at this point?
8, 9.
Okay.
So my mom leaves my dad. I was 10. Denise, my sister, was 9. Moved back to Hazard, Kentucky, and at that point, my mom was just a fuck, dude. I mean, just an abusive parent was what she was. She would beat us, but that wasn't the worst. But the worst part was the mental and the emotional stuff. You know, this is a woman who'd tell us, I gave up my life for you, and I'm going to leave one day and never come back, and you'll find me dead someplace. You know, just constantly this. So what happens is she moves us back to Hazard, Kentucky. We're living in an apartment underneath of her parents, and they were absolutely insane too. This is her dad. We couldn't eat upstairs. We didn't have any food. Couldn't eat upstairs because they would always, tease us and talk about how poor we were. He would make sure that when we bathed, we were allowed a bath a week, 1.5 inches, 2 inches of water, no more than that. If he found out any more, he'd raise absolute total hell, right? So we were living in that environment. My mom out partying all the time. Sometimes she'd take us with her, leave us in the car. We'd wait in the living room as she went in the bedroom and got it on with somebody. Most of the time, she just left us at home. And what happens is first crime I ever committed. Home for a few days, no food in the house. I'm the kid that used to, I'd be scared mom wasn't coming home. That's the way I took it all. She said it, she's not going to be back. So I'd post up at the window or walk out in the driveway. Denise, 9 years old, angry as shit. She didn't worry about that. And to this day, Denise still has those anger issues. But my first crime, no food in the house. Denise walks in one day, got a pack of pork chops in her hand. I'm like, where'd you get that? She's like, I stole it. I was like, show me how you did that. So she takes me over to A&P, shows me how she's stealing food. And I'm like, good idea. And we get to where we're wanting a sandwich, man. And Denise had been stuffing the food down her pants. That's how we were getting the food out of there. Kmart across the way, and you can't put a loaf of bread down your pants. So I looked at my sister and I was like, let me see what I can do. Walked into Kmart, 10 years old, walked into Kmart, got a hoodie off the rack, took the tags off of it, put it on, wore it out, got out. And I was like, shit. So stuffed the loaf of bread down the sleeve, walk out A&P with it. Kmart, of course, start stealing toys and games and books, clothes, everything else. Mom comes home, sees the shit. Where'd you get this? I stand up. We found it. She's like, you didn't find this. Denise stands up. We stole it. My mom looks at my sister. Show me how you did that. So she starts running us as little shoplifters, calls her mom. So it's this intergenerational shoplifting ring of all of a sudden. We start taking these road trips. They go to JCPenney's and steal clothes and jewelry, bullshit like that. I was the book guy, so I'd always stop at the bookstore and steal a load of books and take them back and devour them. But first crime I committed right there. And usually at that point in the presentation, and you know this, I'm sure you know this shit too. I don't know how old you were when you started crime. I was 10. And, when you're a kid, you can't help what the adults in your circle do. You're going to do the shit they do.
Yeah.
But when I became that adult, I chose to do that.
Yeah.
But I had that path laid for me. My sister, other than that shoplifting, she's fine. Anger issues out the ass. But Denise is a parent. She's a teacher. She works hard every day, doesn't break the law or anything else. I was the guy that just kept on going. And so that's the first crime I committed right there. And I found out quickly that not only my mom, but everyone on that side of the family were criminals.
Yeah.
It's
a whole ring of
whole damn
men.
thing. So I grew up, man, doing insurance fraud, faking accidents, burning cars for cash, burning homes, faking accidents as well, trafficking drugs, growing pot, illegally strip mining coal. I was on the Lex Friedman show. He got a kick out of that bullshit. But document forgery, I grew up knowing how to do that until I branched off on my own. I faked a car accident in 94, 96, got the money to get married, moved from Hazard, Kentucky to Lexington to go to UK. And I was an English major and theater major.
Do you have a job during any of this time, or is it just one lick after one lick's carrying you on to the next one?
So that's a good question. The first job I had, my stepfather, my mom gets remarried. My stepfather, he was a coal miner. She talks him into quitting his job, going into the coal business. And that's where the illegal strip mining comes in. He couldn't afford to get the permits, the 2-acre permits. So he does what's called wildcatting. That's where you just go in and take the coal out and you don't worry about reclaiming the land or anything else. And that's how you make money. A lot of people do that in that area. So he goes broke doing that. And we ended up living in a 40-foot trailer. Me, my sister, my stepdad, my mom, and a work hand. We're in this 40-foot trailer for 18 months, living off literally deer meat, cornmeal. And I remember saying to my sister, I'll never do this shit again. So another motivator all of a sudden. But what happens is I forgot your damn question.
No, I was asking if you had a job during this whole thing.
So the first job I got is he finally rebuilds himself, starts logging. So he hired me. We didn't have any money. He's like, I'll pay you $20 a day to go out and log with me. So I logged 10 hours a day, $2 an hour was the first job. The first company I worked for was Domino's Pizza. Became a manager and ripped him off for probably $30,000 in a year until they found out about it. I mean, I was living pretty well and everyone got pizzas. So that was the first job. The second job was I worked at J. Peterman, like from Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I worked at the real J. Peterman company for a while, ripped them off. Then I moved over to, I was at a deli assistant manager at Kroger for a while. Didn't rip them off because that was a corporation. They'd find that out. But I did eat well from the deli. Then I went over to, there was a place called the Lexington Diners Club. Gave you this discount. They sold telemarketing, this discount card for restaurants. You'd go in and you buy one meal, they give you another free. I ended up stealing. They sold those cards for $60 a piece. So one night I just did a B&E, went in and stole like 300 of these cards and set up my own telemarketing shop, selling them until they found out about it and I got charged for that. So that was another one. I worked for the Shriner Circus for a while. They ran the Shriner Circus. This company ran Shriner Circus donations and Kiwanis donations. So I set up my own Kiwanis charity and would do telemarketing to get the donations to go in my pocket. Got caught, did 3 months on that. After that is when I find the internet. So that was all the little scams going up to that. So I'm online every day. Found eBay and I was like, shit, I like eBay. Didn't know how to make money on eBay. So I used to watch Inside Edition. Idiot Bill O'Reilly, he was the host of Inside back then. And they were doing a show that night on Beanie Babies, profiling Peanut, the royal blue elephant. I'm sitting there watching like $1,500. Shit, I need to find me a Peanut. And I was really naive. I was like, well, I'm in Kentucky, got all these little rural stores and everything. I just go around to all these stores and surely there's one in the bin.
Yeah.
So 6 hours of that the next day, I'm like, no, there's none in the bin. Their asses are on eBay for $1,500. So what I did was they had the gray Beanie Baby elephant, the exact same elephant, just a different color. Had that thing for $8, and I'm like, buy the gray Beanie Baby elephant for $8. Stop by Kroger on the way home, pick up a pack of blue Rit dye, go home, try to dye the little guy. Turns out they're made out of polyester, don't hold dye. You literally get them out and you see all the ink draining off the damn thing. So here I am, trying to dry it with a blow dryer so the ink stays, and it looks like it's got the mange when you get through with it. And what I did was found a picture of a real one, posted it on eBay. Woman wins the bid. As soon as she wins the bid, I'm like, send her a message because I want to put her on the defensive, not me. So I sent her a message. I was like, hey, congratulations on winning the bid. We'll get this right out to you. The problem is that we've never done any business before. I don't know if I can trust you. What I need you to do, go down to the U.S. Postal Service, pick up a couple of money orders for $1,500, send those to me. Once I get those, I'll send you your animal. She believed that. Sends me the money orders. I cash them out. I send her this creature in the mail. Immediately get a phone call. I didn't order this. My exact response was, lady, you ordered a blue elephant. I sent you a blue-ish elephant. And right there is, that for me, that was the first lesson of cybercrime right there. Delay a victim long enough. You just keep putting them off. A lot of them, because they don't know who to report to or anything else, they get exasperated, throw their hands in there, walk away. None of them complained to law enforcement.
Right.
So first crime I committed, got away with it, kept going. We got to where I was another Inside Edition. They were selling autographed baseballs of Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. So I was watching that and I was like, shit, I can do autographed baseballs. Go down to Academy the next day, buy a case of baseballs, stop by that same Kroger, pick up a Sharpie, go home, start trying to sign it. And I was like, shit, that doesn't look anything like their signatures. So then I was like, well, okay, so they're signing it at the field. Certificate of authenticity. So I printed my own certificate of authenticities, sold them all $60 a piece. About 3 weeks later, knock at the door. Bam, bam, bam. You know, that cop knock. Bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
I was like, I was married at the time. And
honey, it's for you.
yeah, my wife, she's just looking at me because she knows what that knock is too. You know, you've never heard it before, but you know right there. And I'm like, okay.
Or if they hang out with you long enough, they get to know.
They get to know at that point. So I opened the door, and the cop's name, he was Sergeant Pat Tingle from the Fayette County Sheriff's Office. I opened the door. He's there with the detective. He's like, are you Brett Johnson? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, can we come in and talk to you about some baseballs? I was like, sure, come on in. So my wife, Susan, she's just looking at me. She stands up by this point. She doesn't even look at them. She's just looking dead at me. So they're like, autographed baseballs. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. And yep. Where'd you get them? Bought them off eBay. With certificates of authenticity. Yep. Off eBay. Yep. Mr. Johnson, we've got a sample of their signatures down at the office, and it doesn't look anything like them. I was like, that's weird. They come with certificates of authenticity.
I was going to say, I have a certificate.
And they're like, Mr. Johnson, we think you printed those off. And I was like, no, sir. And Mr. Johnson, we think you signed those baseballs. And I was like, nope, not me. So then they're like, you're going to send these people their money back or we're going to put you in jail. Do you understand? I was like, I understand that. So they leave. My wife, Susan, the whole time she's looking dead at me. Finally, I look over and I was like, what? And she's like, you son of a bitch. That's why you bought all those goddamn baseballs. And I'm like, yeah. So that was one. There was another where Microsoft Front Page, they were giving out free trial versions of Front Page 98. So I had the crack that would turn it into the full version. So I posted on eBay. I had the full version for like $30. And there was a Kinko's down the street. So one night, 2 a.m., I walk in and look at the guy behind the counter. And I was like, do you mind if I take a few of these trial versions? He's like, dude, you can take all of them if you want to. And I was like, yeah. He was like, yeah. So I just pick up the entire stand, walk out of the door with it, go up, post them all on eBay, sell them all for $30 a piece. That gets a knock at the door.
Same deputy?
Same guy. He came like 4 times, man. He would be like, Brett, come on now. But what was happening is they were all, everyone I sold the stuff to, they were all out of state.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to come to Kentucky to file charges.
Yeah.
So,
and it's like who, like at that point, who the FBI, it's not like they're really used to this quite yet.
Right.
He once conned Bank of America out of $250,000 using nothing but a fake ID and his charm. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't typically commit crime, but when I do, it's bank fraud. Stay greedy, my friends.
Support the channel. Join Matthew Cox's Patreon.
So those were the first little scams, and I kept going, got better at it. Finally, I start selling pirated software. Pirated software leads into mod chips, first into gaming systems so you can play the pirated disc. Then I started putting mod chips into cable boxes so you can watch all the pay-per-view, all the porn, all that bullshit. Then finally, started programming satellite DSS cards. So those 18-inch RCA systems, you pull the card out of it, program it, turn on all the channels. Started doing that. Canadian judge, right as I start doing that.
Connor's shaking his head. He's always disappointed. Like whenever I tell stories, he always halfway through, he starts going like, what were you?
Like, shit.
What are you doing?
So a Canadian judge ruled that, this was like 97, 98. Canadian judge rules that it's illegal for Canadian citizens to pirate RCA signals. And his exact language in court was, RCA doesn't sell the systems here, so it's legal for my citizens to take those signals. So overnight in the United States, little industry pops up. You go down to Best Buy, buy the system for $100, take it out in the parking lot, open the system up, pull the system out, pull the card out, throw the system away, program the card, ship its ass to Canada, $500 a pop. Started doing that, making a lot of money. Had so many orders, couldn't fill them all. Quickly, and I mean by God, quickly thought to myself, why do I need to fill any of the orders? They're in Canada. I'm down here. Who are they going to complain to? So I didn't fill any of the orders. Stole even more money. I was stealing like $4,000 a week at that point, making a pretty good living, and was getting worried about things. I was like, man, I'm going to be looked at for money laundering. So I got it in my head. I was like, what I need is I need a fake driver's license. I'll use that driver's license to open up a bank account, launder the money through there, cash out at the ATM. No one will know me. I'm at UK. I have no idea where to get a fake ID. So I get online, look around, think I find a guy, send the son of a bitch $200, send him my picture. He rips me off.
You said you're at UK, what?
University of Kentucky.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So dude rips me off, and I got really pissed.
Fuckers.
Yeah.
Scam artists.
Scam me. So I got really upset and started to look around. Well, back then, the only real avenue you had for online crime was IRC, Internet Relay Chat. Rolling chat board, no idea who you're talking to, if you can trust them, if they've got a product or service, if they've got it, if it works, or if they're just going to rip you off because those channels were loaded full of fucking scammers. So what happens is, I first find the only site that was out there was called Counterfeit Library, and it was a tutorial site on degrees. It had some bullshit identity stuff on there. Just not really good.
What year is this?
This would have been 97, late 97, early 98. So find this site. They had a forum that literally no one was using. I was like the third person that was registered on the forum. So I start going on there, and the only thing I'm doing is just bitching every single day about getting ripped off and how I need this. Well, about the same time that I register, two other guys come on the scene. One is screen name Mr. X out of Los Angeles. The other one's screen name is Beelzebub out of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. So we start bullshitting around every day. And I'm talking about my eBay fraud that I'm doing, everything else like that. And one day, Beelzebub, he gets me on ICQ. That's how we used to talk all the time, was ICQ. He gets me on ICQ, and he's like, I can make you a driver's license. I'm like, well, shit, dude, do it. And he's like, no, but I'm going to charge you. I'm like, yeah, you're going to charge me. He's like, no, I'm going to charge you because if you're going to do this kind of stuff, you've got to learn to trust people if you're going to be in this business. I'm like, well, by that point, I'd already established a pretty good rapport with the people who owned Counterfeit Library. They knew me. I was emailing, they were emailing back and forth all the time. So I thought to myself, I was like, well, shit, he's going to rip me off. I can at least get his ass booted off this site. So I was like, bet, let's go. So I sent him a picture, sent him $200. 2 weeks later, in the mail, I get this Ohio driver's license from a guy in the name of Stephen Schwecke. Turns out he's a real dude, works to this day at ADP Payroll. So I saw that damn thing. Now, looking back at it, That driver's license was not great quality, but I didn't know that. To me, it was the prettiest thing in the freaking world. So here I am. I'm running checks through check cashing places, setting up accounts, opening drop addresses at mailboxes, et cetera, all this other bullshit. So start using it extensively. And what happened was Beelzebub, he made driver's licenses. Mr. X made a very passable Social Security card, which was very easy to do. And then I didn't really have any skill at all except eBay fraud. So Beelzebub said, hey, why don't you become the reviewer on this site? That way, any product or service that comes in, you get to look at it, get to see how it's used, learn everything that you need to do, and you're not selling anything, so you're more trusted than somebody like me that would review people. And I was like, let's try that. Well, that is really like the field of dreams for cybercrime. If you build it, they will come. And they did, because the only avenue you had other than that was IRC. No one wanted to be on that bullshit. So they started to come on Counterfeit Library. Counterfeit Library, so the genesis of modern cybercrime, 3 sites: Counterfeit Library, Carter Planet, Shadow Crew. I ran both Counterfeit Library and Shadow Crew. Dmitry Golubov, Ukrainian national, builds Carter Planet. And the way that happened was he saw what was happening with Counterfeit Library. He liked that. He was a spammer at that point in time, getting all these credit card details. And he thinks to himself, I wonder if people would buy stolen credit cards. Turns out they will. So the dude picks up the phone, calls, he's in Odessa. He picks up the phone, calls his buddies. They call theirs. They have a physical conference in Odessa. 150 of these cyber criminals show up, and they launch the idea of Carter Planet. And that's the genesis of all modern credit theft that we see today. So Counterfeit Library, over the next couple of years, transitions over to Shadow Crew. The people who started Shadow Crew, Seth Sanders built Shadow Crew. Me and Kim Taylor, I was the head of Shadow Crew. Kim Taylor was the second in charge. Seth was the third, but Seth was just an ID guy. He never really liked the credit game at all, so he ends up kind of dropping out over the years. The first 2 guys that started with me.
Lucky him.
Yeah, lucky him. The first 2 guys that started with me, Beelzebub, Mr. X gets picked up in Las Vegas, cashing out cards. Beelzebub was hooked up with Mark Engel up in Canada, big-time pot grower, who then snitches on everybody. So Beelzebub goes back to growing pot in there, and at the end of the day, I'm the only guy left standing. So at one point in those forums, every single business transaction that took place went through me. That was I was the trust mechanism. And what I said was, hey, if I vouch for someone, if I give someone a review, if you get ripped off, I'll cover you. I'll make sure that you're reimbursed or you get a like product that you can use. So that built trust within those environments. What happens from there is we get too big. By the time we actually transition over to Shadow Crew, I can't do it myself. So I sit down, and over the space of a week, I come up with this review system that you still see in place today. So today, we've got reviews, vouchers, escrows, things like that.
So are you actually making money doing this? Or just something that's you're loving doing it? You enjoy it?
Well, certainly you love doing it. I was online anywhere from 14 to 18 hours a day. I stole anywhere from $12,000 to $24,000 a month until the credit card scene hits. Once the credit card scene hits, I'm profiting $30,000 to $40,000 a month. So I'm doing pretty well. So Counterfeit Library starts out as an identity theft site. Identity theft, fake driver's licenses, eBay fraud, PayPal fraud, that. Once Dmitry Golubov comes on the scene, I'm the guy that brought the Ukrainians in because they didn't have a way to cash out over in their area. So once credit hits that scene, we transition almost overnight from that identity theft site over to a credit fraud site. And it blows up big. And that's where we get in a lot of trouble and finally get caught. So what happens is, we had this thing called they call it the CVV1 hack. It's not a hack, but that's what it's called. We were spamming all these details. And back then, when you launched a phishing attack, you could have 20 fields. You could ask everything in the friggin' world, and they would answer it. So we would get complete identity profiles just from one phishing attack. Okay?
Because people weren't used to it at that time.
They'd never seen
it was a brand new thing.
Right.
They have no clue what's happening.
Yeah, you send them an email. It looks like it comes from Bank of America.
And they think,
and
my bank.
Yeah, what's your account number, social, DL, mother's maiden. You'd get everything right there. So we were getting card numbers and PINs as well. And we were using those card numbers to commit CNP fraud, so just online credit fraud.
Right.
For you to encode that on a counterfeit card, you have to have complete track 2 data. So on the back of that credit or debit card, the mag stripe there are 3 data tracks. First data track is the customer's name. Second data track, the card number, 16-digit algorithm outside of it. Third data track, indiscriminate data, no one uses it. What's sold is that second track, all right? Now, back then, we didn't have that algorithm. We weren't doing skimming. We were just doing phishing is what we were doing. What we found out, though, like I said, in order for you to encode that and take it to an ATM and cash out, you've got to have complete track 2. Back then, none of the banks had implemented the hash, which means you've got the card number, you've got the PIN. You can take the card number / and any 16 digits out the side of it, it would encode. You could take it to an ATM, start pulling cash out. We started doing that. So up until that point, a carder doing...
When was the, what year was this?
This would have been up through... So that CVV hack went on from 2001 through 07, 08.
Jeez.
It was when it started to really die down. So 2001, none of the banks had implemented that hash. So an online carder was profiting, a good one, was profiting 30 to 40K. And that's working your ass off, okay? 30 to 40K a month is what you'd profit at that point. Once that moves over into cashing out at ATMs, that's 30 to 40,000 a day.
It's just as fast as you can get the money out.
As fast as you can pull the cash out. So you'd literally map out a route of ATMs, stand there until you feel bad, and move on to the next one. Well, my forum techie, fucking genius that he was at the time, and he was a really bright guy. Albert Gonzalez. He starts, he gets involved in this. And we hired the guy as our forum techie. He goes into credit card sales under the screen name Scarface, does all this other bullshit. So he's in New Jersey one day, broad daylight, doing this CVV1 cash out. Broad daylight, standing at an ATM. 40 minutes. 40 minutes standing there, feeding one counterfeit card in, pulling $20 bills out, stuffing them in his backpack. 40 minutes of that.
This was in the documentary. Yeah.
So just so happens, a couple of cops notice the kid. One of them's
That's
like,
odd.
Yeah, let me go over and ask him what he's doing. So he goes over. Albert falls apart, flips, goes to work for the Secret Service. Now, the thing is, back then, law enforcement suffered from what I like to call FIS, fucking idiot syndrome. All right. They didn't know anything about cybercrime at all. Didn't know how to track you, anything else like that. So we would see on the server side for Shadow Crew, we would see IPs coming in from DOD, Pentagon, FBI, Secret. We'd see all these IPs. So we knew what time it was. At the same time, you'd see local and state forums, law enforcement forums that would mention Shadow Crew explicitly. Not only that, but we had this kid named Enhance. So Enhance is the guy back in 2001 that publishes Paris Hilton's phone contact list. I don't know if you remember that bullshit or not.
Yeah.
So that's this kid. He not only did that, but he intercepted text messages of the United States Secret Service investigating Shadow Crew. So all this was out, and I'm sitting there going, this does not end very well. Now, Albert gets picked up. I had happened upon this thing called tax return identity theft right before that, in 2002.
The drop.
So 2002, I start stealing $160,000 a week, 10 months out of the year, committing tax return identity theft. Basically filing taxes on dead people, having everything deposited to a prepaid debit card. Did that manually, would file a return every 6 minutes, do that for 3 days of the week. Fourth day, plot a map of ATMs. Next couple of days, cash out the cards. So
this is before there's any. So this is at the infancy of that scam, which
right at the beginning,
blown up now,
but wide open, no security in place whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it took the IRS. That was 2002. The IRS actually starts putting security in place 2011. So it took them 9 years to start looking at IP ranges, velocity of attack, all this other bullshit. So it takes them 9 years to do that. I started doing that. Albert, and because I saw the writing on the wall, I was the head of Shadow Crew. I'm sitting there going, and whether it was real or not, I was sitting there going, okay, I'm worried about RICO. I'm worried about I'm going to be charged with everything that everyone under me is doing. So I'm like, I quit.
Yeah. Deservedly,
right?
By the way,
like deservedly. It's not like
they're going to try and get me. They're going to try and pin that on me. No,
they're going to.
That's why guys like you are exactly what, well, and to a degree, me are exactly why they that law.
That's why that's there.
The CCE or continued.
And they're going to give you 25 or 30 years.
Yeah,
they're going to do that. So I'm like, I quit. So I stepped aside. What keeps me from being arrested on the Shadow Crew bust? So Shadow Crew makes the front cover of Forbes, August 2004. Headline: Who's Stealing Your Identity? October 26, 2004, U.S. Secret Service, 33 people, 6 countries, 6 hours. I'm the only guy publicly mentioned as getting away. A few other guys got away, just weren't talked about at that point.
Right.
All right. What keeps me from being caught is I stepped away from Shadow Crew right before Albert Gonzalez comes back in. And here's what that story, what actually happened was, he goes to work for the Secret Service. As I said, Secret Service had no clue about how to track these guys. So they literally looked at him. How would you catch these guys? And he was like, well, have you thought about a VPN? And they're like, what's a VPN? So he has to explain to them what a VPN is. And they're like, good idea. So I quit. He comes back in, takes over Shadow Crew, bans anyone who asks any questions so that no paranoia is out there, bans everyone and says, hey, in order to be safe, we need all traffic to go through this VPN that I've set up. That way no one can monitor us. Well, the Secret Service owns a VPN. They capture like $7 million worth of traffic coming through, and that's where the bust comes from. So the bust is October 26, 2004. I'm picked up February 8th, 2005.
Can let me interject here. So when you're watching these guys get cracked in the head, and there's an article here, and a newspaper article here, and a newspaper article here, like you're seeing all this kind of circling around you. Are like, how are you feeling at that point? Are you thinking, I'm good? I'm going to be good?
Oh no.
Okay.
No. Oh no. So what happens is I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm going through the shit on my own on a personal life. I was married for 9 years. My wife, I lied to her all 9. I mean, took her 3 years to find out I was a crook. The next 6 years were literally this story right here. I'm going to stop. I will stop.
She's trying to wrangle you in, like, if I could just get this guy.
It's like, just a little while longer, dear, until finally it became me looking at her and saying, hey, you like spending money, don't you?
I use that one a lot.
Yeah.
Exactly. Where do you think this money comes from?
Where do you think it comes from? You knew what you were getting into. So she leaves me. And so my mindset, mix my dad and mix my mom. My mom, criminal mindset, my dad, that fear of the loved ones leaving. So my first wife, Susan, leaves. I go through this depression, get suicidal, everything else. Roaming around the house in Charleston, South Carolina, had a house on the river, everything. So roaming around the house, realize I'm getting suicidal, figure, hell, I need to do something about that. Pick up the phone book, call a psychologist, cry to the psychologist on the phone. I mean, I broke down completely. She's like, come in today. So I go in, tell her everything. She's like, for 4 months, tell her everything. For 4 months, I'm like, do you have to report anything that I might tell you? As long as you're not actively breaking the law. I'm like, okay. So tell her everything. She's like, for 4 months, she's preaching about how I need to go into real estate and not crime. And I'm like, is there a difference between the two? So what happens is, I don't start drinking until I'm 34. I was 34 at that point. I never drank until that point. So I start drinking, had never been to a strip club. One night I get lonely, I get horny, and I'm like, shit, why not? So I go to a strip club, and I'm literally that guy. I am that guy, dude, that falls in love with the first one that he sees. I walk in, she walks by, I'm like, that's the one I need. Move this chick in with me. yeah, it's nuts. Move this chick in with me. After I move her in with me, find out she's addicted to coke. Not only, and now I know all this bullshit. Not only is she addicted to coke, but she's prostituting herself to support her habit. And I laugh about it, but the truth of the matter is, I love the shit out of that woman. I did. I absolutely adored that woman. And I get it in my head. I was like, if I can fix her, we'll be together. I keep feeding myself these tales. So I used to take road trips for a lot of the fraud. It gets to the point where she stops coke, quits her job, and she gets this, just codependent personality, don't leave me attitude. So I can't take a road trip anymore. I've got all my money overseas, go broke. All right. So where I find out about Shadow Crew, I'm in the grocery store one day, just happened to walk past the magazine aisle, and I see this article about identity theft on the cover, and I'm like, huh.
Might be a good article.
So I open it up, and it's like Shadow Crew, and I'm like, oh, fuck. So go sign on to Shadow Crew at that point under a different name, and the response on Shadow Crew was, it was initially this, fuck yeah, we've made it, followed almost immediately by a, oh, this ain't good.
Yeah.
So that was the response. Of course, 4 months later, 2 months later, Shadow Crew gets popped. Okay, so the day that Shadow Crew gets popped, by that point, I'm monitoring Shadow Crew because I know something's going to go. All right, so I'm monitoring Shadow Crew almost every day. So go to sign in, and of course, the Secret Service has altered the face of the website, saying, you know, you're no longer in the shadows. They've changed the screen on it. You could still access the site at that point, and there were a couple of other sites by that point that had been set up. So I'm going over these other sites to see what the news is, and no one really knew at that point what had happened. Of course, John Ashcroft, the head legal guy in the U.S. at that point, Attorney General at that point, he comes on CNN and he's talking about Shadow Crew. So I'm sitting there watching all day, and I'm like, shit.
God.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just just a country boy.
Yeah.
I'm
from Kentucky.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
I'm the only guy that was publicly mentioned as getting away. The other guys,
well, not you, but you're like your screen name, right?
The screen name.
Okay,
the screen name. Gollum's the only one that got away from that.
Okay.
What no one else knew, there were other guys that got out. For example, the Secret Service, literally in the air, they timed everything for like a Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern is when the bust happened, because that's when most people were online at that point. They wanted to get everyone at the same time. Some of the guys that got away, one of them was named Tron, and this kid was over in the Ukraine, and he was very effective about getting into Bank of America. Very effective. So they were in the air to arrest him. They called the local PD in the Ukraine saying, hey, we got a warrant. We're coming down to arrest him. Local PD is like, oh, yeah, come on down and get him. So they get in the car before the Secret Service gets there. They get in the car, go to this kid and say, hey, they're coming to get you.
Yeah.
We're going back to the station. And the kid takes off on the run, gets his ass down in South America, and he's a few years getting caught at that point. But there were different guys who got away that weren't mentioned. I was the only guy. They picked me up 4 months later, February 8th of 2005, Charleston, South Carolina. FBI picks me up, Charleston PD. Within 45 minutes, Secret Service comes in, takes over the investigation. What happened was I was being interviewed. 45 minutes in the interview, door opens up, two agents pop in, they sit down, and they're like, we're U.S. Secret Service. We'd like to talk to you about some credit cards. And I'm like, fuck. So they let me sit in the county jail for a week.
Okay, wait a second. Sorry. I maybe I missed something. How did they get to you, though? Exactly. Did you just explain that?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
so
I'm sorry.
What happens is I go through, I was
like, were you one of the guys that went through the VPN that was set up by?
No,
okay.
I was in love with this stripper.
Right. Okay.
All right. I go through all my stateside cash.
Like, I hear you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're not wrong.
I'm not wrong.
Okay.
So go through all my stateside cash. Can't get over to Latvia to get the rest of it. So when Shadow Crew is busted, the way tax season ran, it ran from January 15th through October 15th. The bust is October 26th. So I'm not filing taxes to get any more money. I can't run credit cards because the forums just got shut down. I don't know who to trust anymore. So what I'm left with is running counterfeit cashier's checks. Bam, bam, bam. Looking for COD orders, cashing out bullion, stuff like that.
Of course, that's the go-to move.
Of course, and it's stupid as fuck, all right? Because I used to preach that. I was like, don't do this shit. You're going to go to prison. So what happens is they identify that some guy in Charleston, South Carolina is doing this. They reference the forums. They're like, oh, it's this guy. So they set up a controlled delivery. They knew I was cashing out Tiffany diamonds at that point. So they set up a controlled delivery for these, it's like a $30,000 order for Tiffany engagement ring. Not engagement, wedding bands of all things. But FBI does that with controlled delivery. Charleston PD does that. Secret Service had been notified I was going to be picked up. So they were all ready to go. So they picked me up on this controlled delivery. What happens is UPS driver pulls in. I had a drop address. UPS driver pulls in. I pop out of the car, walk up, and I was like, you got a package for me, don't you? And like, yeah, you got an ID? I was like, yeah, show him my ID. Give him a counterfeit cashier's check for $30K. Turn around, 30 people in the fucking parking lot. All cops. I'm like, oh. So get popped there. I got popped February 8th, 3 weeks before I was scheduled to be married. My stripper girlfriend had no idea what I did for a living. So she finds out at that point. They let me sit in a county jail for a week. 2 agents fly in from New Jersey because that's where Albert was arrested. The centralized location for all cybercrime investigations was out of New Jersey at that point. So 2 agents fly in from New Jersey, pull me out of a cell, and they're like, "We got your laptop." I'm like, "Yeah, you got anything on your laptop?" "Yeah." "Well, you're going to be charged for it." I figured. And then they looked at me and they're like, "Anything you can do for us?" And my exact response was, "You let me get back with Elizabeth, I'll do whatever you want me to do." So then they're like, "We're going to get you out." I'm like, good. They let me sit there 90 days to get a taste of everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Got to get a taste of it. So they popped me out after 90 days. First person I call, by this point my sister has disowned me and everything. First person I call is Elizabeth. And I'm out, and she's like, "I'll be there." So this chick, midnight, I'm standing in the parking lot of the Charleston County Detention Center. This chick pulls up in a limousine. No shit. She had a friend on the limousine company. She pulls up in a limousine. Me and the agent are watching this. Trunk pops open. She gets out, walks around to the trunk, gets out these 2 plastic storage containers that have my clothes in them, comes over, drops the clothes in front of me, hugs me, call me later, gets in the car, drives away. I'm sitting there crying. Oh yeah.
Oh, I thought she's like there, like, come on in, baby.
No. I'm sitting there crying. Agent looks at me. He's like, "Is that your fiance?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Man, I am so sorry." I'm like, "Yeah." So I had $30 to my name. The agent has to pay for my hotel room that night and pay for my food that night. So he checks me in. Soon as he leaves, I've got $30. I'm like, time to start. So walk my ass to Walmart, buy a prepaid debit card that night so I can get back into tax return identity theft. And long story short is I continue. Well,
so the 90 days wasn't a good enough taste.
Not a thing.
Okay.
So I call Elizabeth. I beg her to get back with me. She does. Start breaking the law. Break the law for the next 10 months from inside Secret Service offices with them in the room with me. So, yeah, until they find out about it. At that point, they revoke the bond. Judge reinstates the bond. I go on a cross-country crime spree, steal $600,000 in 4 months, make the United States Most Wanted list, go to Disney World, get caught, get arrested, escape from prison, get caught again, serve out my time. So
how's the escape from prison? Is that a camp? You went to a camp?
It was a camp. You know, I'd like it to be a helicopter, a gunfight, that kind of shit. But it's always a camp, right?
Yeah.
So my dad had...
yeah, because I've been in mediums and lows, and you're just not getting out. Like, it's like... unless it's a helicopter.
Say that, man. They sent me to Big Spring Prison after that. And the week before I got there, these 3 friggin' idiots, they had... I guess they'd got some dental floss or whatever the fuck they had got, and they had cut the bars from the culverts that led out of the prison, had climbed through the culverts, got outside of the fence, and they were supposed to have a ride, didn't have a ride. They're like, "Well, we need to go back in and call."
They get caught coming in?
Yeah. Caught coming back in. So you can get out. But the way I escaped, my dad, I hadn't seen the man, hadn't had a conversation with him in like 20 years. He shows up at my sentencing, stands up in front of the judge. I want to make sure Brett gets a good start. He can come and live with me when he gets out, everything else.
How much time did you get?
Initially 75 months.
Okay.
So Jesus, that thing. My guidelines were 60 to 75. And I had told everyone in the pod, and I made it known that if I got any more than 60, I was not staying. So day of the
so the counselors and SIS, everybody already knows this.
No, he's not staying.
No.
So what happens is day of sentencing. Dean Eichelberger was a prosecutor. He stands up and this dude is screaming at this point. He's like, "Johnson has manipulated the Secret Service, the prosecutor, and today, Your Honor, we want the upper limits of the guidelines." I'm sitting there going, so judge looks at me and she's like, "I agree, 75 months. Well, I'd never used drugs before. I got arrested in Orlando. Guy in Orlando takes me in under his wing. He's like, "The only time you get off is the RDAP. And I was like, "Well, I don't have a drug problem." He's like, "Well, you can find a drug problem, can't you?" And I was like, I can find a drug problem. Yeah. So they give me diesel therapy on the way back, stop at all these county jails. Every county jail, I'm like, cocaine and alcohol. Get back to Columbia, South Carolina. I get a psychological evaluation order. Psychologist comes in, 4-hour evaluation. About halfway through, he's like, use any type of drugs? I'm like, yeah. What do you use? Cocaine? Smoke or snort? Snort? How much? An 8-ball a day. And he looks at me and is like, that's a lot. And I was like, yeah. You got any trouble out of that? Yeah, I can't get an erection. And he looks at me, and I looked at him, and I got that shit from watching Boogie Nights, that money shot at the end where Mark Wahlberg just can't stand to attention. I'm like, that's got to be right. So I'm looking at the psychologist, and finally we're both silent, and I'm like, is that right? Right. he looks at me, he's like, it could happen. Is it still happening? And I was like, no, but not that I want it to be all right now. So that makes it into my pre-sentence report. So the judge, she gives me 75 months. I looked at my lawyer. I was like, can you get the drug program for me? So he's like, I don't know. I'll ask. So he stands up. Your Honor, will you order the drug program for Mr. Johnson? She's like, no, but I'll recommend he gets evaluated. I looked at my lawyer. I was like, what does that mean? Well, you're probably not going to get it. And my exact words were like, how soon can you get me to the camp? And he's like, if you don't appeal, I can get you there pretty quick. Exact words. Fuck the appeal. Right. Get me to the camp. I'll take it from there. He looks at me like I'm the biggest idiot in the world. 6 weeks later, I'm in Ashland, Kentucky. I had family and friends research camps that weren't supposed to have a fence. Get to Ashland, 14-foot fence, razor wire on top. And I'm like, shit. Go in through processing, look at the guard. And I'm like, any jobs outside of the fence? And he's like, well, you can work in the National Forest. And I'm like, no, I'll die out there. And he's like, well, you can do landscaping. I'm like, I can run a weed eater. So I go into about a week later, once you process through and go through all that bullshit, walk into the guard's office. Behind his desk, the entire wall is this aerial photo of the compound blown up with the outlying area. So I can literally sit there, plot the escape. As I'm talking to him, my dad starts to visit. About the third visit in, he's like, I've been reading about you online. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah. He's like, that's a lot of money you made. I'm like, yeah. He's like, you think you can teach somebody how to do that? And when I used to tell that story, I started out lying. I said that, I thought my dad was back in my life, and he wasn't. The truth of the matter was my dad hadn't talked to me in 20-some years. And I really believe that he saw me through the frame of my mom, that criminal mindset. And I think that's the only way he thought he could talk to me like that. And I manipulated the man and helped me escape. He had $4,000 cash to his name. Got that, got an ID, a change of clothes, and a cell phone, and ran off. I was there at the camp for 6 weeks, left. U.S. Marshals, they canvass a 3-state area, find me holed up in a hotel, and I get sentencing on that. Spent 8 months in solitary. A day of sentencing, go in, Secret Service is there, prosecutor's there. Prosecutor stands up and he's like, Your Honor, you should consider that when Mr. Johnson was arrested, he was arrested with a laptop, prepaid debit cards, he stolen identity information. Looks like he was involved in this stuff yet again. Judge looks at him and says, no. If you were going to charge him with it, you should have charged him with it, because it come to find out they came in the room, took the shit without a warrant, just scarfed it all up. Weren't able to use that as evidence. So the judge says no. Because the escape happened so quickly after the initial sentencing, they use the exact same PSR. So the judge starts going through the PSR, looks at me, and he's like, Mr. Johnson, it appears that before you got involved with all these drugs, you were a pretty good citizen. I was like, yes, Your Honor.
Yes, I was.
Yes, sir. So then he looks at me, he's like, so what I'm going to do.
You need RDAP.
Yeah.
You need RDAP.
Like,
I do need RDAP.
What he does is he's like, I'm going to give you 15 months on the escape. I'm like, okay. And I'm going to order the drug program for you. I'm like, all right. Yeah. So 15 months extra, but RDAP gives you what? 18 months with that 6 months halfway out. So I ended up, by escaping prison, I got out of prison 3 months earlier than I would have without the escape.
He once got plastic surgery because he didn't like the photo on his wanted poster. His legend precedes him, the way indictments precede arrests. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't typically commit crime, but when I do, it's bank fraud. Stay greedy, my friends.
Support the channel. Join Matthew Cox's Patreon.
So that's what happens. But like I said, I did 8 months solitary confinement until they sent me to Big Spring Prison. Big Spring Prison is out in West Texas. It's a disciplinary, medium-low, converted Air Force compound. So hot, no shit, Matt. So hot that warnings would come on the radio telling you that you couldn't drive on certain streets because the asphalt was melted. It got that hot there. Went in, and at a camp, it's completely different. And when I got there, that's when you realize that guards don't run things.
Yeah.
The inmates run the shit that's going on there. So I'm met as I get processed out, going up to the barracks, treasurer of the Aryan Brotherhood, he's standing there. I'm the first white guy who walks up, and he's like, hey, how many more white guys came in? I'm like, shit, I don't know, 4 or 5. Next question, what are you in here for? My answer, computer crime. Big smile on my face. He looks at me like,
thinking, I thought you were a child.
Yeah. So he goes and gets his buddies because they thought I was a child molester. They circle around, what'd you say you're in here for? So I'm sitting there trying to tell them this shit. And end of the day, they're like, sounds good.
Gonna need to see something.
Yeah, you need to see something. Well, by that point, nobody's letting you travel with bullshit.
Right.
All right. So first 30 days, everyone thinks I'm this child molester. Until Wired magazine hits the compound, I'm in the magazine.
Right.
It's about Max Butler, all this other bullshit. I'm in the magazine. I'm like, shit, I've
read
good.
the article
there
when
you
I was
go.
locked up.
There you go. I'm like, shit, I'm good to go. Until I get to that one line that says Brett Johnson, Secret Service informant. So those magazines hit the compound at 4 o'clock mail call. Chow call, they're already talking about it in the hall. So next morning, the entire compound gets shut down. Brett Johnson, warden's office. So I go in, they've got SIS there.
Is this at a medium?
This is at Big Spring Disciplinary. So it's a medium-low disciplinary is what it is. So warden brings me in. First question's out of his mouth. SIS counselors are there. First question is, did you give an interview to Wired magazine? I'm like, yes, sir. He was like, when? At Oklahoma detention.
Without going through the public, what do they call it? The public information officer.
Exactly. Yeah. How did you do that? In 15-minute increments, sir.
Yeah.
So he was like, don't you know they'll fucking kill you in here? I was like,
maybe.
So then he's like, do you feel safe? And, I knew by that point, you tell them no, they're going to throw you back in the hole until they transfer your ass.
Yeah.
So I'm like, completely safe.
Yeah.
So he looks at me, he's like, if anything happens, anyone says anything to you, you need to come and tell us. I was like, gotcha. They do a locker search, try to get all the magazines off the compound. A couple days later, I walk into the barracks. There's Nick Sandifer, the treasurer. He's got the magazine reading it. I'm like, fuck. So I walked up to him. I'm like, hey, Nick, what you doing? Oh, just doing some reading. Anything interesting? It's getting there. Let me save you the trouble. Take the magazine, point the line out to him. He looks at me. He's like, man, I already knew. I was like, are we going to have a problem? He's like, did you snitch on anybody that's on this compound? I was like, no. Until someone gets here you told on, we're going to be okay. I was like, all right. But I had a couple of jobs I had to do. So the first job I got, you have to work in feds. So I got a job in education, teaching a lit class. All the Aryans sign up for the lit class. And we taught fraud every Wednesday, 6 to 8:30 p.m. So that was the first job. And then you could call me the liaison between the white chomos and the Aryans. So I would be the guy that, as they come off the bus, you know as well as I do, you know who they are. Mm-hmm. As they come off the bus, I would be the guy that would have that conversation. Hey, don't know if you're in here on some sort of fucked up charge, but if you are, it's best you tell me, because if you associate with these guys later on, they will fucking kill you.
Yeah, they're just going to swing on you.
That's it.
Right.
So, and most of the time it would be, man, I just want to do my time. And you knew at that point, okay, you're not allowed in the TV room.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to talk to anybody. You talk to your own kind. Somebody wants to extort you. That's the way this shit goes.
You're on your own.
You're on your own, and understand. And that's how I got out.
You know what's funny? I used to get the guys that all the shows, when they would just ask them what they're there for, fraud.
Yeah.
Which used to irritate me because I would be like, you can't pick another fucking, you can't pick another crime. It's got to be fraud. And then of course, then so what would happen is some guy would come in the unit, it'd be some white guy, fucked up looking white dude, and he'd say, "Oh, I'm here for a credit card fraud." I go, and then then the guys would come to me. They go, "Cox," and I go, "Yeah." They go talk to this guy, and I go, "Why?" He says he's here for fraud. He don't look right to me, and I'd look over at him, and I'd go, "Fuck."
Yeah.
I'd walk over and I'd go, "Hey, bro, what's going on? I heard you're here for fraud." And he'd be like, "Yeah, I'm here for fraud." And I go, "Oh, okay." I go, "What kind of fraud?" "Credit card fraud." I go, "Well, they charge you with credit card fraud?" "Yeah, they charge me with credit card fraud."
That's the charge, right?
Yeah. Well, there's no credit card fraud. And I was like, "Okay, well, what'd you do?" And they go, I took money out of credit cards." "Well, did you work at a bank? Did you how did the fraud work?" "I'm here for fraud too." And they go, "Well, it's not like a learning experience." And I go, "Oh, okay, he's a chump." And then I just walk off and it's like.
So you had that basic same job.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Well,
because you're a fraudster.
And I taught the real estate class for 10 years. Now, at the medium.
Now, when you taught the real estate class.
So at the medium, when I was at the medium, you could say anything.
Yeah.
You could say, "Look, here's how, so you get the money, the down payment. So what you do is this. The guy gives you money back. Start a company and you get the money back here." Like I'd break it down exactly how to get your down payment back, how to do everything.
Get to camp, you can't pull that bullshit.
No. Yeah,
right.
you can once.
Right.
Like then you get the talk.
That's it.
"Are you telling people how to do things fraudulently?" "No, someone said that? That's crazy. Who would do that? I'm in here for fraud. I would never." So then I realized fuck, I'm going to have to really fine tune my class here. And so I did that, taught GED also.
I taught game theory, public speaking, and then the lit class.
Right. So you do the things that the sharp guys do that give you credibility, that make you an important person of value.
That's what it is.
And then nobody bothers you.
If you have value, you're absolutely right. If you have value in that system, you're okay.
Yeah.
If you don't.
You can do pretty much anything. Yeah. Well, because what happened with me was I was in the medium. And the St. Petersburg Times came out. Now keep in mind, the St. Pete Times, I'd already been on Dateline. But when I was on Dateline, I had just been arrested.
Okay.
So I haven't even done anything yet. Right. I was interviewed later, but I'm not cooperating. I'm not doing anything when I get first grabbed. But then what happens is once I get sentenced, get to the medium, I'm at the medium, and suddenly St. Petersburg Times comes out, front page article, where I've been talking with a reporter about a politician that I had bribed, and
that's what to do.
In it, it talks about how I cooperated with the FBI and the Secret Service for 7 or 8 days. This is my lawyer saying that. Oh, he cooperated more than anybody I've ever had in 15 years. I'm like, wow, don't hold back.
He just sang and sang. He wanted to work some more with him, man.
Desperately. Straight to the fucking shoe for 45 days. I'm telling him, look, I'm fine. Put me back out.
Because they're not going to do anything to you.
No. The worst that happened was I had a guy come up to me and say, one of the white guys comes up to me and goes, "Hey, Cox." I'm like, "Yeah, what's up?" And he goes, "Look, what was the guy's name? It was Bubba. Bubba was the guy who ran. He was a shot caller."
Yeah.
So he goes, "Bubba wanted to let you know, wanted me to tell you, you can't walk the yard." And I went, "What? You can't walk the yard?" And I went, and I thought, and I already kind of come to my conclusion that I was like, either I'm going to, there was multiple things. One, shut my, because I got a slick mouth.
Right.
So I'm going to shut my mouth.
You're not going to shut up.
Right. I'm not going to shut up for 20-something years.
Right.
So you shut your mouth for 20 years, or you just run your mouth and say smart ass shit, and you're going to get slapped every once in a while. I'm 5'6". I'm not beating the shit out of some 6 foot tall biker. So you're going to get slapped every once in a while, but you're going to have a good time.
Right.
And two, you're either going to get beat, guys are going to beat you up, or you're going to spend all your time in the fucking shoe. So you know what? I'm just going to get beat up every once in a while. So I looked at him and I said, "Well, listen, bro, I'm going to be out at the yard tonight after chow. So if Bubba wants to talk about it, he can talk about it then." And I walk off trembling.
Sure you do.
I go get my cousin, who happened to be there, and we get a couple other guys, and we go and we walk the track for about an hour, and they see me,
but nothing happens.
But they say nothing.
Right.
And that was there was one other small episode where he told a guy that was talking to me in line, that guy's a confidential informant. He didn't even call me a rat, which I appreciated. That was nice. Didn't say snitty.
I was called the rat.
Said confidential informant. I thought that was very, nice of Bubba. And told the guy, you keep talking to him. You ever need our help? First, you're not going to need his help. But you ever need his help, you can't rely on us. So the guy goes, "Okay, Bubba." And walked 10 people back. And I'm like, that was pretty much it. Like, I never really had a problem. You get the slide comments, but that's it.
Yeah, my problem with the Aryans, there was this one kid who was trouble with them anyway. His name was Adam, and he was the only one. He'd catch me in a crowd, and he'd just start running his fucking mouth, trying to get somebody to get me. And so one day we're all in the unit together, and we used to, we'd bullshit together. I'd bullshit around with the Aryans. And Adam was running his mouth, and I looked at him, and I was like, Adam, I want you to know I'm getting scared of you. And he looks at me, he's like, good. And I was like, well, the way this is going to work out is you're going to be asleep one night, and I'm going to stab a pencil in your eye. And he looks at me, and he's like, telling you the truth, man. So the next day, they make his ass check in.
He's causing problems. They don't want problems.
They don't want problems.
Like you get in a routine and your time's going good, and they don't want any problems.
Yeah. So and the head guy there, his name was Farmer, big fucking Nebraska boy. I mean, huge dude. And I still remember, man, this guy he was talking about. I'm sure you saw it too. You take the domino, right, and you'd shave the domino down.
Oh, God. Are you serious? Look, Bozak knows, and we talked about that the other day. And they fucking cut the
penis, shove the domino in there, pack it with ointment, and it would heal up. So that was the first thing the dude did, and we're like, shit, we ain't doing that. So he comes in one day, he had been talking about getting a tattoo, and he wanted the Punisher symbol right on the head of it. So we're like, you're not going to do that, dude. No one's going to
be pretty close.
Yeah, we're like, no one's going to do that. So he comes in one day and he's like, got it done. And we're like, no. And he's like, anybody want to see? And all of us at the same time, fuck yeah, we want to see. So we're gathered around. He drops it. I was like, that is the Punisher symbol. So yeah.
Oh man.
And that's the thing. I mean, it's you're right. You can shut your mouth, or I talk a lot too. You can shut your mouth, or you can just be you. And as long as you got value, not every day is horrible.
Yeah,
I found happiness and had fun every friggin' day while being scared to death sometimes.
Yeah. No, I get it. How much time did you do total?
7.5.
7.5 years.
You did what? 20?
No, I did 13.
13.
I did 13.
That's a hell of a taste.
Yeah, but I got 26 and 4 months. So it wasn't game time.
No, it was not.
It was, yeah.
Did you go initially to a max or a medium?
No,
or
first of all, I went in with camp points.
Right.
Even though I was on the run, like I never got an escape or anything. So I was on the run. I had two points.
Okay.
I should have gone straight to a camp. But you got 26 years. Right. Can't, unless you're under 20, you got to go to a medium. Go to a medium. I'm there 3 years because you have to do 23. Mm-hmm. Then I go to the low.
Okay.
But I cooperated. The problem is, in the cooperation, it was at the beginning of the financial crisis. So they were like, look, these crimes are 3, 4, 5 years old. We've got him for the stuff he did. And these other people, like, fuck, we got banks that are going under for, $800 million or $500 million. Like, these are bigger crimes. And so they just never really went back and grabbed these people that I had cooperated against. Well, so now I'm screwed, right? Like I've been locked up. Then what ended up happening was that I had been asked to do Dateline, NBC. I'd been to be interviewed. I was interviewed. They said they'd consider it substantial assistance. Well, the U.S. attorney said, we did consider it. It's not. So, it gets worse. It gets worse. Then American Greed comes to me. They come to my lawyer, go to the U.S. attorney. U.S. attorney says, look, I want him to be interviewed. I will definitely consider this substantial assistance. Great. I do it. I'm brought into the warden's office for 2 days of interviews. They have me on there. They run the program. Right. We go back. We say, okay, you said you'd consider substantial assistance. She goes, I know we did. It's just not enough. I'm sorry. Then I have this guy that runs the National Mortgage Brokers education program in the United States. And all mortgage brokers have to do 3 hours of ethics and fraud. So he comes to me, he says, you actually owned a mortgage company. You were a FHA lender. You were you're the only person that's hit every crime on the mortgage spectrum. And you were a broker and a loan officer. I mean, you owned a mortgage company. Could you help me write this course? I said, yeah. He flies. I said, you got to go to the U.S. attorney, flies to Atlanta, gets on paper. I do the course. They start using the course. We go back to them and we say, you said you consider it substantial assistance. She goes, it's just not
Jesus,
enough.
Dude.
I know. So finally I end up getting a guy who files a 2255 for me. And we go back and forth. And eventually the government offers me 1 level off my sentence. But they will allow me to go in front of the judge and argue for more.
Okay.
They fly me up there. I argue for more. I get 3 levels off. That ends up being 7 years.
Now, did you plea out or go to trial?
I plead
Okay,
super guilty.
So did you get the 3 points of that for the plea?
Yeah,
or not?
yeah, I
Okay.
did. Still didn't about 26 years.
Jesus, man.
So I get 7 years off my sentence. Then I come back. I'm at the low. I come back. I'm walking around the compound. And there's a guy on the compound who did a $57 million Ponzi scheme. And he likes me. He's cooperating.
Of course he does.
Like, I'm openly telling people, they're like, hey, Cox, how much time you got? I'm like, well, I got 26 years, but somebody might fuck up and tell me where there's body buried, and I'll be out of here next week.
Right.
And they'd look at me and say, damn, it's like that, Cox? I go, it's exactly like that, bro.
It's
like,
exactly
we're not
like that.
friends. I don't care what happens to any of these fuckers.
Right, exactly.
And they're like, Jesus.
We're not breaking bread
Right.
when we get out.
And
We're
now
not
I'm
doing
at the
that.
low. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could be pretty cocky at the low.
You can run your mouth.
So I'm walking around with this guy, and just a vicious character all the way around. Really reminded me of my dad. He liked me. He was cooperating with some other guys. We're walking around one day, and he's telling me, man, they're not going to give me anything for my cooperation. I go, why do you say that? You might testify. Who knows? And he goes, yeah, I know. I just don't think so. He goes, they think I hid Ponzi scheme money. And I go, well, you didn't, so don't worry about it.
Right.
And months go by. He mentions it a couple times. So finally one day I look at him and I go, bro, I said, you keep mentioning that they think you hid Ponzi scheme money. I said, if you didn't, they won't find it, so don't worry about it.
But he did.
And he looked at me and he goes, can I trust you? And I went, I said, probably not. And he started laughing and he goes, I did put some money away. And I thought, you're fucking up. So he ends up telling me a little bit of the money. But this guy got my brother got like 30 grand. My ex-wife, or soon to be ex-wife, got like 150. I'm afraid they're going to turn it in. And because my ex-wife found out I was having an affair, blah, blah. My brother's just scared.
They do tend to frown on that.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is I don't actually say anything. I'm actually disappointed in myself because I waited months before I happened to be talking to my lawyer, and everybody's like, dang, bro, so you really struggled. No, my struggle was I didn't say anything because I thought they didn't want to give me anything the first time.
Right.
Why
would I tell? And
it's not going to be worth it.
Yeah.
And so it just happened. I was talking to my lawyer. She said, hey, everything going on? What's going on? I was like, nothing. And she happened to say, this is a woman who never wanted to help me. It was the weirdest thing. She said, anything going on in there? And I went, like, you didn't give a fuck when you were representing me. I was like, no, not really. And she goes, nothing you want to talk about? I thought it was just weird. And I went, well, you know what? There's a guy in here named Ron Wilson. And I tell her. A week later, I get called into SIS. They put me on the phone with a Secret Service agent. I get him on my email. I start telling him what's going on with Wilson. He starts asking me, ask him this, ask him this, ask him this.
No shit.
Oh, yeah, this goes on for 6 months. And he's asking me questions. Some of the questions I'm going back like, bro, you want to get me killed?
Yeah.
Like, I can't ask. How am I going to bring that up?
Right.
I've never even heard of this person. So anyway, I work with them. Eventually, they file for, they re-indict Wilson. They indict the brother, the sister. They get they both basically get probation.
Right.
He gets 6 more months. And I think but they recover $500,000.
Okay.
And I think they're never going to give me nothing for that. So I end up, they never do. They say, they even said, we don't even know what Mr. Cox is talking about. We don't have no idea that he's even working with the U.S. attorney. Working with the Secret Service. Anyway, the point is, I had an actual email from them. So I sent them the email. And I had multiple emails. So I sent them the email. I hired the same guy, this guy, lawyer, ends up representing me again. He's in prison with me, in prison. I end up getting my sentence. He gets my sentence reduced again 5 more years. By the time that hits, I'm gone. Like a year and a half later, I walk out of prison. And listen, it was, and when that one hit, too, same thing. Listen, everybody knows I'm cooperating. Right. Everybody, right. And I'm just, you're either. It just, to me, it is what it is. I get guys that are like, oh, you fucking snitch. Okay, well, you be a stand-up guy and do 20 fucking 6 years.
You're not going to do that.
Oh, I never said nothing. I understand that you got a DUI and you did fucking 10 days, or I understand you got fucked up and you went to jail for 18 months. Okay, right. But you weren't looking at 26 fucking years, and you don't fucking know me. And first of all, I never thought I could get 26 years. That's insane.
It is. It's crazy.
For filling out paperwork.
And you pled out at 26.
Right. But it's the same thing. It's like, look, bro, I'm filling out paperwork. I didn't break into someone's house.
Right.
I'm not carjacking people.
Meanwhile, you got the child porn guy doing 10. Huh? If that. You got the child porn guy doing 10.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You got, to me, bank robbers that are zip tying people and taking over banks and getting away with, granted, no money, but you're terrifying people, and they're getting 6 years, 7 years.
That's it. So you got out when?
I got in July 2019.
All right. So now when I got out, I was in 3 years probation. Couldn't touch a computer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Had job offers from Deloitte, from KnowBe4, payment processors. Actually had offers and wasn't allowed to take them. Got to where I was trying for fast food. Well, that cash register, that's a computer. No. Next thing was, what about a waiter's position? Computer and credit cards? Fuck no. So couldn't get a job. So what kind of trouble did you have trying to get a job? And I'll tell you what happened to me after that.
I mean, my judgment commitment, says that I cannot work or consult in in finance, real estate, development, or construction for some reason. And so
you can't even consult.
No, I had to take for 1 year. I had to take a behavior modification class where you meet with a psychiatrist once 1 hour a week.
Right.
Of course, I have the financial where I have to fill out the form, but I also have to fill out paperwork every month to tell them how much money came in to come up with my restitution. I still owe like $6 million.
Okay.
I'm good for it.
Yeah, I know you are.
So
have they charged that off where you're just going to take your tax returns for the rest of your life?
Oh yeah, no,
me too.
They're going to take them forever.
Yeah.
But other than, obviously I have to do the piss test and I can't travel or do anything like that. Although I have traveled, I just had to get permission from the court.
Okay.
Had to get my passport back. Now keep in mind, 2 of my charges are passport fraud and one was fraudulent application of a passport and one is actually use of a fraudulent.
So you filed one under someone else's name for renewal or something?
No, I had like 24 passports.
Nice.
I had 24 passports.
Nice. I say that, I shouldn't say that, but still, that's pretty fucking nice.
Pretty good, right? 27 driver's licenses in 7 different states.
So
from the DMV.
That was the next question because we had a contact out of Knoxville that would shoot us real Tennessee ones.
Real ones.
But the problem was when that guy got popped, they just pulled everyone that he had issued driver's licenses to. And I just went south from there. Just went in.
Yeah,
we were doing that to a degree. Find a little rural one someplace and going like that.
Yeah, I would go. As long as like I get your information in South Carolina, I can go to Tennessee.
Right, because they didn't have reciprocity.
They don't have. They work on a hub system where they can request immediately. They can request like the data. But they can't get the photo for like 48 hours or 72 hours or something. And it's like, okay, if he gives me the ID, I'm good. And if there's a question, they just don't give you the ID. They're like, I don't know, something's not right. But it wasn't not right because I would walk in with the real soch, the real birth certificate, the real this, the real that. I registered to vote. I got this, I got that,
The register to vote. I mean, that's
right.
That's one of the steps.
Yeah.
You got to do that.
Yeah. It's good because these are all real documents. So you're sitting there like, I'm ready to argue. If you have a problem, I'm ready to argue because I know everything's good.
So how'd you get 27 passports?
Through the State Department. They don't ask for. Everybody always says
pre 9/11 or after?
Oh no, this is all after.
This is after. I remember that now.
Everybody always says, they ask for your fingerprints. No, they don't. As a matter of fact, I just got my passport a year ago to go to Amsterdam to do a show called Inside the Mind of a Con Artist.
Okay.
I got my passport then. No fingerprints. I did get stopped.
Yeah,
on
we
the
were
way
doing
back
the way we were doing passports was filing for renewals on people who had never been issued a passport, and they were shooting passports out like that.
Yeah, these guys had never had passports. I was getting homeless people, so I'd go and
Not bad.
Look at it. Not bad.
Not bad.
I like where your head's
Not bad.
at.
You see, that's what we like. Yeah. We like that outside of the box thinking.
I actually had I made a statistical survey form, and it looked so good. And it was a couple pages. It was like 17 questions. And I would go out to where the homeless people were. I made a Salvation Army badge, and I walk out there, and I'd say, "Hey, can I talk to you real quick?" And they'd look at me, and they'd go, "Oh yeah, what's up?" I go, "Listen, I work for the Salvation Army. We're trying to figure out where we're going to put our next indigent, our next homeless shelter."
Say you like crackers? I got some crackers.
No, I gave him $20. I gave him $20. you know, I'm not
$20 or Mad Dog. What do you want?
$20, and then would go and borrow like $1 million,
Yeah.
1.5 in their name.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe not fair trade, but still, they were happy. No, I had nobody said
they couldn't have done it themselves.
No.
There you go.
And so I would just say, hey, by the way, $20, we're trying to figure out, you know, where to put our next homeless facility, just a survey.
Right.
And they were like, yeah, what's up, man? I'd say, okay, just real quick. I'd give them, you know, here, let's do this. Name, date of birth, social security number, mother's maiden name, you know, where do you live, or last known address.
Where did you
live? You ever been a member of the military? Do you get Social Security disability? Have you ever had a U.S. passport? Have you had any identifications? And if so, in which states?
Yeah, so basically you're just fishing in person.
What high school did you go to? Because you can get their high school transcripts.
Right.
So I get their information. I then order all their information.
Right.
Get it all in. And then I know he's had an ID here and here, or driver's license here. And then I just go 2 states over.
And be all right.
Walk right in and say, listen, I just moved. I lost my license in the move. I don't know what you need. And then you start, I know what you need.
Well, it says here you're a 5'4" black man. I know, but I identify as a black man.
Yeah. with a good pair of shoes. So, so they would just go in and they give me the ID. Then you turn around, you immediately go and fill out I would immediately fill out for my, my passport, go get the passport photos, walk into the U.S. Post Office where they have a passport control. You walk in there, you sit down, you do your little boom, boom, boom. They go, okay, great. They sign off. They give you your stuff. They take your birth certificate. They mail it back 10 days later.
Right.
Used to be if you paid extra, within about 6 weeks you got it. Now it's like 3 months before you get it.
Right.
But yeah, I would get them, and I just get them, and I've been in and out. On the run, I went to Greece, Croatia, Bermuda, Mexico, Jamaica, Italy. I just already said Greece.
Right. So
so I was.
You got caught stateside.
Yes.
Yeah. How'd you get caught?
Girlfriend.
Girlfriend.
You know.
Stingray.
Yeah. Stingray. What? Oh yeah. The Stingray. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Stingray.
Yeah.
That's what got me. So stateside. Okay. So I guess I'm turning into the interviewer.
No. Wait. But you were saying. So those were the constraints on me. Like I was ready to work at McDonald's. By the way, I was okay with that.
So did you have trouble getting a job or not?
I got lucky, and a buddy of mine owned a gym.
Okay.
And hired me in the halfway house. And then by the time I got out of the gym, I was being asked to go on different people's podcasts, and I'd written a book.
Okay.
So I had published the book. I'd written like 7 books. So I started publishing books.
Self-published, you have a publisher?
Well, so one of them was published by a publishing company.
Okay.
But I mean, I got like a of course I was in prison. You know, I got like a $3,500 advance. Barely make any money on the thing. And I made more money publishing on Amazon, self-publishing,
no kidding,
than I've ever. Way more than I ever made on that. But I also had optioned the film rights to some guys. I got them in Rolling Stone magazine. Optioned film rights. Nice. Got out. Optioned a couple more film rights. So I got out. So I had a little bit there coming in, and I started painting. You saw some of my paintings.
I like it. For those who don't know, his work is outstanding on Patreon.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's where you need to go.
So I managed, moved into somebody's spare room, but I wasn't. Like I had all these job offers, and every time I called my probation officer, it was no.
Right.
And so I would have been back into real estate very quickly or finance or something, but I'm restricted from doing that.
For how long?
5 years.
5 years. Okay.
And I can't get off probation early because I owe $6 million.
Yeah, you're not going to get off that early.
Right.
Unless you violate, then they may kill it.
Yeah.
Which is what happened with me.
Oh, is that what happened? You violated?
Dude, I'm out. I can't get a job. I'm out in Panama City, Florida. No money. Literally cannot get a friggin' job. No money. I'm bumming money from my dad and my sister. I've got a roommate taking care of half the rent, getting food stamps so I can friggin' eat. And, they tell you, I guess they gave you the same speech, when you get out, find something you care about and a job, and you won't recidivate. So I can't get a job. What I cared about, had a little cat, and had the money to feed my cat. I didn't have the money to buy toilet paper, man. So went to the Dollar General store, bought the cat some food on the way out, kiosk there, toilet paper, and I'm like, first crime right there. And of course, it dovetails quickly from that point. But my wife now, Michelle, so my turnarounds, my sister had disowned me. She comes back in my life after the escape. my wife, Michelle, I ended up meeting her right after those thefts like that. Moved in with her because I was getting ready to get kicked out of my house. Moved in with her, finally got a job. And the only job I could get was pushing a lawnmower. That was it. 10 hours a day, $400 a week was the pay on that. Pushing a lawnmower, busting my fucking ass.
How old were you?
Geez, I was 42 at that point. 43 at that point. 10 hours a day pushing manual lawnmower. And busting my ass. I'd come in so tired of a night, literally fall asleep, wake up the next morning, take a shower, hit it again. And I was happy doing it, though. I was finally doing something.
Yeah.
And job ends, grass doesn't grow when it gets cold. I'm in North Florida. Grass isn't growing those 4 months. So job ends, and that reason I commit crime, I got to show Michelle I'm worth it. I'm like, well, I can bring food in the house, get on the dark web, get credit card details, start putting food orders in. And of course, again, it dovetails because you're like, okay, food, kids need clothes, Christmas is coming up. Shit, she could use some stuff. I get popped. Controlled delivery on a food order. Michelle had no idea what I was doing. Go back to prison. At my sentencing for that, U.S. Marshals, prosecutor, probation officer, me and Michelle. Michelle stands up. She's like, he's a better dad to my kids than their actual father is. I'm sitting there crying. Prosecutor stands up. We think he's a good guy. We think it's just a one-time thing. Probation officer, same thing. Judge, 1 year. Probation officer stands back up, says, Your Honor, if you'll give Mr. Johnson a year and a day, he can get the good time, get back to his family. Judge amends the sentence to a year and a day, so I do 10 months. They send me, yeah. I mean,
it's a whole different group than I had.
Lucky as fuck. So go back to Texas for 10 months. And have this big awakening moment. I'm like, Michelle didn't need me for the shit I could give her. She just needed me for me.
Yeah.
So do my 10 months, get out. They kill probation because I violated. They kill probation at that point. I can get a job, get married to Michelle. Can't get a job, though. I'm the guy that steals everything.
Yeah.
So can't get a job, and I'm sitting there, trying to find work at doing anything. Can't. And I guess you may be the same way. I know what my triggers are. I know what gets me back into crime. Back then it was, I know I'll go so far before I do it again. So I looked at Michelle. I was like, let me see what I can do. Signed on to LinkedIn, reached out to this guy named Keith Milarski, FBI out of Pittsburgh. He was involved with a lot of these arrests back in those days. And I sent him a message. I was like, hey, you did a great job. No hard feelings. A lot of respect for you. I'd like to be legal. Dude responds within 2 hours, man. Takes me in under his wing, references everything else. From there, Identity Theft Council does the same thing. The CNP group, Card Not Present, they're for online credit card fraud. They hear about me, hire me to be a keynote speaker. From there, Microsoft hears about me, hires me to consult with them. And that lays enough trust in the industry where today, I've got my show, The Brett Johnson Show. I speak at Quantico. I ambassador for AARP. This year, Arcos Labs, they started this new C-level position called Chief Criminal Officer, first one on the planet, all this other stuff. I'm talking to Ridley Scott, all these people about doing the show. And I'm serious. And I want to ask you about this stuff too, but I lead a very blessed life these days. Mm-hmm. And I don't deserve it, but I'm damn grateful to have it. And the question I have, we've laughed a lot about 27 passports, shit like that. But it's we can laugh about that, but at the same time, there's been this just shift in the mentality. Yeah, I think about breaking law all the time, but I'm not going to do that. And where did that shift come with you? Good question.
So, well, it's not a good question because I've had such a good interview, mm-hmm. and it's been fun, and we've been laughing, and
then we get sober.
Right, and the problem is emotionally when I start to talk about it or think about it, I tear up. When you're like, I cried like that. Listen, cried like a small child at my sentence. And when I think about the person I was and the person I am, although I laugh and I love that time in my life and I love doing those things, but I think about when you went to jail.
Right.
The one thing I know, the one thing you never once laid in bed and thought about was, God, I miss that nice car. God, I miss that nice house.
You don't think that shit at all.
All you thought about was, I miss Michelle. I miss the fucking kids.
Yeah.
I miss my cat. I miss that's it.
That's it.
All I ever gave a shit
You don't
about.
worry about that material stuff at all.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what happened was I went to prison angry, pissed off, furious, didn't deserve this much time. Right. These piece of garbage. I was reasonable. I was like, yeah, okay. I broke the law, but I didn't deserve this much time.
Right.
And even to this day, I'm like 26 years. Come on,
it's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time, but it's like you don't get to choose.
Right.
So, you're putting yourself at their mercy the moment you do that. So, and I think that I started thinking that way. Met a buddy of mine. He got like 30. He actually got 40 years. And, we started talking. And one of the things he had told me one time was, you can't go to prison and continue to think in the same manner that led you to prison and leave prison and not expect to come back.
Right.
And I was, and that's more than just, oh, no, but I'm not going to commit crime. He's like, it's not the crime. It was your thought process.
Yeah.
So, and you'll eventually commit a crime, if you keep thinking like that. So what happened is, went to prison, wrote a memoir, my memoir.
Okay.
And when I was writing that memoir, I ended up writing the first draft, which was horrible. Had to rewrite it, read several books about how to write.
Right.
And ended up writing this little tiny book, and I wish I could remember it. And the woman was like, look, you need to look into your life. One of the things you need to do is look in your life and figure out what the key moments were that helped create the person that you are today, so that it will explain to the reader, it will give the reader reasons what helped craft you.
Sure.
And I used to hate to complain about my childhood or anything. I don't want to say that because you meet guys that were like chained to they were locked up in the basement or their parents beat them almost to death, or they, horrible things.
Right.
That it was like, I didn't have that. My dad's an alcoholic, and it's like, what am I crying about? Daddy didn't love me enough. But the truth is, I rewrote that book. And as I wrote that book and really started focusing on that, I started realizing that there were definite things that led me to be the person that committed those crimes. And then the other thing I started realizing was like, what a selfish, narcissistic prick I am. And I fight it today. I fight it to this day.
Yeah,
guys are like, well, if you know that about yourself, you can, at least you can help change that. I'm like, I try.
I mean, I like being an asshole sometimes.
I agree. And that's the worst part is like you're trying to change someone who just loves himself. That's hard.
Yeah.
But one of the things is like, what really started bothering me was I took art app.
Did it do any good? It did after for me.
I think it did great for me. Although I had learned most of these lessons by the time I got in it.
Right.
But I really felt like it helped me really kind of figure out what my issues were. And I remember, I didn't notice it so much, but everybody that talked to me on the phone, I talked to my ex-wife, and 5 minutes in, she'd be like, okay, what's going on?
Yep.
And I'd go, what? She'd go, we've been talking for 5 minutes. You know my kids' names. You're asking how Nick is, her
You're
new
not
husband.
just focusing on you.
Yeah. You haven't you haven't told me what's going on with you, and I've asked twice. And I'm like, nothing. I'm here. I'm doing whatever. I was just wondering whatever happened with Ethan. I know he was sick. She's like, what's going on? So, because the truth is, when I have most conversations, I am typically barely listening, and most of the time, I'm really just waiting for an opportunity so that I can turn the conversation so that I can talk about me.
Right.
And that is such a selfish, fucked up thing. And when I see myself telling myself at the beginning of a conversation, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And then 20 minutes later, I realize we've been talking about me for 10 minutes. And I think, you're a fucked up individual.
I mean, we are.
Right.
We are. But, that's the thing, though. So even today, I took this 9-hour drive to come down and talk to you today. And
I appreciate. Which I even asked Tyler over. I was like,
he's driving?
First, he was driving. Secondly, because when he was saying to me, when we were talking, I was like, you're telling me Brett Johnson's going to come on my podcast. He knows I can't pay him, right? He knows I'm broke, right? Did you tell? He didn't ask for any money. No, you need to make sure.
Nothing.
And I was.
No, and the reason why I do every podcast for free. I don't ask for cash on that because it's also a type of therapy for me. I try to find out something new about myself every single time. I wanted to talk to you because we've got that South Carolina relationship.
Right.
You have that U.S. Most Wanted thing too. So I was like, this will be a good conversation. I wanted to ask you that question that I just asked you. I took a 9-hour drive, and I do these long ass drives because I used to walk this track when I was in prison, and I would think every single day about my life, the people I'd fucked over, everything else. And on these drives, I get to do that again.
Yeah.
I get to consider everything, work through these issues, everything. It's not surprising to me what you were talking about. Writing, that's that therapy again, where if you're truthful,
which, like I said, the first time I wasn't.
Right.
I wasn't, and that was a problem.
But if you are, I mean, you really sit there and you examine yourself, and you get these answers that sometimes you don't want, but by God, they're there, and you can't deny them once they're out.
And you know what? What's funny too, because anybody watching this is watching, like I've probably said this 1,000 times, is that had millions. All the money I needed in the world before prison. I'm on Xan. I'm not. I've got a prescription for Xanax, Paxil. I'm miserable. I'm unhappy. I got a girlfriend and my girlfriend's got a girlfriend. I've got tons of money. I got great vehicles. I'm traveling nonstop. I'm living great. I'm not concerned about being on the run. And even prior to that, when I wasn't on the run, I was just committing crime. I was just miserable, unhappy. And then I get out of prison with nothing. And I used to love to tell people that I wanted. They were like, what are you going to do when you get out? I'm like, I'm working at McDonald's. And they were like, why? I was like, because I want to work at McDonald's. I want to live in someone's spare room. I want to start at the bottom, because I was so much happier in prison and so much happier getting out of prison than I ever was prior to that, having everything I ever fucking wanted. Because to me, it's like I'm so, like, it is. It's the whole, I hate the term, I'm blessed, but I am blessed. I'm thrilled. I'm happy. I have people around me that like me because they want to be around me, not because I'm going to make them $300,000 next month, or they're getting $50,000 here or $100,000 here, or they're just hanging out with me to fucking hang out with me.
Yeah.
Like
because when you get arrested, you find out that those friends ain't.
Oh no. The more money I made for people, the quicker they hung up the phone if they picked it up at all. The people that I never made any money for showed up and came to see me, would come visit me, would look stuff up for me, send me books. It was such a reality fucking check for me to go to prison.
With me, and I'm really no different on that. It's if I would have gotten out and immediately went into the speaking, the consulting, the bullshit I do today, I wouldn't have appreciated any of it. But I didn't do that. It took me years to build up the trust in that industry, and applying this 18 hours a day of bam, bam, bam. You mentioned before, you wake up, you work 80 hours a week. I work 80 hours a week. Yeah. I wake up working, I go to sleep working. And it's that the ability to build yourself up from nothing to that success in a legal way screams it's just, by God, yes. At that point, I've done it. I did it without doing anything wrong, and it's me. And you were a criminal. I was too. But to show that we're able to succeed in a legal lifestyle as well talks about the character of the person. And I'm giving myself credit too, but you too, man. I mean, it's really, there aren't many people out there able to do that. You think of everybody that comes out of prison. At least, under 40, you're at an 87% recidivism rate right now. Most of those guys are going to go back. They don't have a support group. They don't have the ability to turn their lives around. And it's just this circular thing. And you're right. We're very blessed that we've been able to do that we've got that support group, people that help us. And what else can you say than that?
Yeah. It's funny, the support group thing, because I used to, I can't mess up. It's like if you had a support group, I think it would almost be detrimental to me, because I'm like I had nothing. I can't. You understand? I cannot screw up. I cannot. And listen, it was so bad. I think I told Bozak this the other day. Was somebody, I was at work and somebody said, I was saving every penny I had. Somebody goes, "Hey Matt, I'm going to where are they going? Whatever, sandwich shop. We're going to the sandwich shop. You want me to get you something?" And I went, "No, I'm good. I got a bag lunch from the halfway house."
Okay, right.
Peanut butter and jelly or mac or whatever it was, bologna. And I said, "No, I got a bag lunch." And her name was Leanne. And Leanne goes, she said, "Do you, Matt?" She goes, "Come on, you eat that every day." She goes, get a sandwich from Jimmy John's. Get a sandwich from Jimmy John's. And I went, no. I said, I'm good. She goes, come on. And I went, I said, honestly, I don't have any money. I don't have money to do that. And she looked at me and she goes, it's fine. I'll get it for you. And I went, okay, listen, Leanne, you're not understanding. Let me be perfectly clear. She was there. My boss is there. Another employee is there. And I said, if out of the goodness of your heart you want to buy me a sandwich, I said, that's fine. I'll take it. I said, but if you're expecting some kind of a reciprocation from me, I said, like 2 days from now, I'll give you the money back, or next week, I'm going to buy you a sandwich. I said, I am not in a position to buy you a sandwich. I will not be in a position to buy you a sandwich for years, possibly, at the rate I'm going. And I said,
at the rate I'm going.
Right? I said, so if you want to give me a sandwich, that's great. I will take it. If not, I have a bag of lunch. Thank you. And she looked at me and she went, kind of looked around at everybody and she goes, I'm going to get you a sandwich. And I was like, I was that like I bought $300 worth of clothes from Walmart in the halfway house. I still have blue jeans that I'm wearing to this day. And I can afford buy some. But it's just like the materialistic stuff just dropped down to nothing for me. Like, I don't want it. Everything I buy is from Ross or Marshall's. Or that's it. Like, I don't think I physically would be able to pay like $150 for a shirt now. And back then I was paying $300-400 for blue jeans. It's like blue jeans. They sell them at Walmart for $29. Are you serious?
What was your brand back then you're paying $300 for?
Oh, they were Diesel. Diesel. I don't even know if they're still out. Like, I know nothing about clothes now. I barely knew it then. But the girl I was with, she's like, "Oh, these are Diesel. You have to get Diesel."
Yeah, my stripper fiance, she likes sevens. So that's what I remember. She tells me, I'd never done anything like that. You know, I was paying like $80 for Lucky's back then, and she looks at me one day. I need some jeans. I'm like, "Where do you want to go?" Saks, and I'm like. So we walk into Saks and she goes over to this counter, and I'm looking at shirts. I'm like, shit, that's $200-300 for a shirt. I'm not going to buy that bullshit. So I look over at her and she's at the jean section. She's just taking one pair after another. It's bam, 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 bam. I'm like, holy fuck. So I walk over. I'm like, how much are those? Oh, they're $230 a pair. And I'm like, how many pair you got? And that was it, man. Yeah. I'm like, shit.
They're expensive.
They're expensive.
Yep.
They're expensive.
Strippers, I mean.
Yeah, strippers. They're expensive.
Yeah, the jeans are expensive too.
Yeah, they're expensive. They have high tastes. She was, from what I understand, she was able to turn her life around. So I'm thankful about that. But I mean, Jesus Christ.
So now you're doing the channel, and
I've got so
speaking gigs.
I've got the speaking. So for those who may be interested, we've got the Brett Johnson Show on YouTube. Tune into it. But I speak across the planet,
and we'll put the link in the link in the description.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I've got speak across the planet. I mean, I literally travel all over the damn place speaking. I've got the documentaries in the work. I'm talking with North South Productions for a Discovery TV show, which is basically Brett Johnson Scams You, is what it is.
Okay.
So talking about that, got a book in the works. I'm actually talking to one of the guys that's responsible for The Irishman. Talking to him this Friday on that. Chief Criminal Officer of Arcos Labs. I mean, dude, I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
I'm doing all right, you know.
It's funny if you just try and just kind of, it sounds so hokey. I hate to even say it. You know, you just try and do the right thing. It's like good things start to kind of happen to you.
It does. And you know, my motivation these days, and it really is one of these wake-up calls when I talk to somebody and they finally realize it. I'm like, don't give a shit about money.
Yeah.
It's about doing the right thing, and I'm going to call it out. Don't give a shit who it is. So I'm that guy. I typically piss off somebody every week about calling out a company or something like that about doing wrong. But that's who I am these days.
Are you? Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for driving.
Thank you.
Okay. And what am I? What?
We're good. Yeah.
We're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Hey. I don't know if I can. But if you like the video, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos like this. Share the video, and please share the video because people leave comments like, I don't understand why your channel doesn't have more subscribers, and I don't understand why you don't have more viewers. And it is specifically because you did not share the videos to your friend and family. That's why I don't have more subscribers. It's because of you. Not because I'm not amazing.
That's right. You are outstanding.
I watched a video of mine the other day, and I thought, damn.
You subscribed to your own video. Exactly.
You're good. You should be huge. What's happening? So leave me a comment in the comment section. I try and respond to most of the comments. And also, I wrote a whole bunch of true crime books when I was locked up. Colby's going to play he's going to play a bunch of trailers that I made. I made the trailers myself. So if you say, hey, who did your trailers? I did them. And all the links to my books are in the description box. And we're going to leave a link to Brett's channel. It's the Brett Johnson Show. It's on YouTube. We're going to leave a link on that. And I appreciate you guys watching. See ya.
Using forgeries and bogus identities, Matthew B. Cox, one of the most ingenious con men in history, built America's biggest banks out of millions. Despite numerous encounters with bank security, state, and federal authorities, Cox narrowly, and quite luckily, avoided capture for years. Eventually, he topped the U.S. Secret Service's most wanted list and led the U.S. Marshals, FBI, and Secret Service on a 3-year chase, while jet-setting around the world with his attractive female accomplices. Cox has been declared one of the most prolific mortgage fraud con artists of all time by CNBC's American Greed. Bloomberg Businessweek called him the mortgage industry's worst nightmare, while Dateline NBC described Cox as a gifted forger and silver-tongued liar. Playboy magazine proclaimed his scam was real estate fraud, and he was the best. Shark in the Housing Pool is Cox's exhilarating first-person account of his stranger-than-fiction story. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
Bent is the story of John J. Boziak's phenomenal life of crime. Inked from head to toe, with an addiction to strippers and fast Cadillacs, Boziak was not your typical computer geek. He was, however, one of the most cunning scammers, counterfeiters, identity thieves, and escape artists alive, and a major thorn in the side of the U.S. Secret Service as they fought a war on cybercrime. With a savant-like ability to circumvent banking security and stay one step ahead of law enforcement, Boziak made millions of dollars in the international cyber underworld, with the help of the Chinese and the Russians. Then, leaving nothing but a John Doe warrant and a cleaned-out bank account in his wake, he vanished. Boziak's stranger-than-fiction tale of ingenious scams and impossible escapes, of brazen run-ins with the law and secret desires to straighten out and settle down, makes his story a true crime con game that will keep you guessing. Bent: How a Homeless Teen Became One of the Cybercrime Industry's Most Prolific Counterfeiters. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
Buried by the U.S. government and ignored by the national media, this is the story they don't want you to know. When Frank Abagnale met with President George W. Bush at the White House to discuss NATO operations in Afghanistan, no one knew that he'd already embezzled nearly $200 million from the federal government, money he intended to use to bankroll his plan to take over the world. From Amadeo's global headquarters in the shadow of Florida's Disney World, with a nearly inexhaustible supply of the Internal Revenue Service's funds, Amadeo acquired multiple businesses, amassing a mega conglomerate. Driven by his delusions of world conquest, he negotiated the purchase of a squadron of American fighter jets and the controlling interest in a former Soviet ICBM factory. He began working to build the largest private militia on the planet, over 1 million Africans strong. Simultaneously, Amadeo hired an international black ops force to orchestrate a coup in the Congo, while plotting to take over several small Eastern European countries. The most disturbing part of it all is, had the U.S. government not thwarted his plans, he might have just pulled it off. It's insanity, the bizarre, true story of a bipolar megalomaniac's insane plan for total world domination. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
Pierre Rossini, in the 1990s, was a 20-something-year-old Los Angeles-based drug trafficker of ecstasy and ice. He and his associates drove luxury European supercars, lived in Beverly Hills penthouses, and dated Playboy models while dodging federal indictments. Then, 2 FBI officers with the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force entered the picture. Dirty agents willing to fix cases and identify informants. Suddenly, 2 of Rossini's associates, confidential informants working with federal law enforcement, were murdered. Everyone pointed to Rossini. As his co-defendants prepared for trial, U.S. Attorney Robert Mueller sat down to debrief Rossini at Leavenworth Penitentiary, and another story emerged. A tale of FBI corruption and complicity in murder. You see, Pierre Rossini knew something that no one else knew. The truth. And Robert Mueller and the federal government have been covering it up to this very day. Devil Exposed. A twisted tale of drug trafficking, corruption, and murder in the City of Angels. Available on Amazon and Audible.
Bailout is a psychological true crime thriller that pits a narcissistic conman against an egotistical, pathological liar. Marcus Schrinker, the money manager who attempted to fake his own death during the 2008 financial crisis, is about to be released from prison, and he's ready to talk. He's ready to tell you the story no one's heard. Schrinker sits down with true crime writer Matthew B. Cox, a fellow inmate serving time for bank fraud. Schrinker lays out the details. The disgruntled clients who persecuted him for unanticipated market losses, the affair that ruined his marriage, and the treachery of his scorned wife, the woman who framed him for securities fraud, leaving him no choice but to make a bogus distress call and plunge from his multi-million-dollar private aircraft in the dead of night. The $11.1 million in life insurance, the missing $1.5 million in gold. The fact is, Schrinker wants you to think he's innocent. The problem is, Cox knows Schrinker's a pathological liar, and his story's a fabrication. As Cox subtly coaxes, cajoles, and yes, cons Schrinker into revealing his deceptions, his stranger-than-fiction life of lies slowly unravels. This is the story Schrinker didn't want you to know. Bailout: The Life and Lies of Marcus Schrinker. Available now on Barnes & Noble, Etsy, and Audible.
Matthew B. Cox is a conman, incarcerated in the Federal Bureau of Prisons for a variety of bank fraud-related scams. Despite not having a drug problem, Cox inexplicably ends up in the prison's residential drug abuse program, known as RDAP. A drug program in name only. RDAP is an invasive behavior modification therapy, specifically designed to correct the cognitive thinking errors associated with criminal behavior. The program is a non-fiction dark comedy which chronicles Cox's side-splitting journey. This first-person account is a fascinating glimpse at the survivor-like atmosphere inside of the government-sponsored rehabilitation unit. While navigating the treachery of his backstabbing peers, Cox simultaneously manipulates prison policies and the bumbling staff every step of the way. The program: How a Conman Survived the Federal Bureau of Prisons' Cult of RDAP. Available now on Amazon and Audible.
If you saw anything you like, links to all the books are in the description box.